All right. So
He just came out.
Oh,
So
just
you can
now?
just line them up.
Okay. All right.
If you want to line people,
Yes,
get people
yes.
lined up. Uhuru!
Don't be on the steps, just try to crowd around.
Can you hear me, Lisa?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I took my
Can you hear
headphones
me?
out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can't hear President yet today, but
I'm holding the mic behind the camera.
oh, okay, got it.
Okay. We got 3 more minutes before we start. But we just yeah. So I'm going to ask when you're speaking, just hold this mic. It doesn't fit here anywhere, so just hold it, and they should be able to hear you from our broadcast. Yeah. So Charles, you're first. Then we have Cam. What's Cam? Cam. Oh, look right past them. Then Mufasa, Ethia. Okay, everybody's close by. Okay, Uhuru. Uhuru. Trying to do it so I'm not looking down all the time. I'm just going to move this back a little bit. And watch, and if you're coming sideways, just watch this leg. Okay. Don't trip over it. Yeah. Yes. You want, okay.
So just be cognizant that we need to leave time for people to get through security.
Yeah, we're stopping at 8:45. Oh, we're stopping at 8:45. Okay,
So
it might need more time than
that's
that.
what I'm thinking, maybe 8:40 or 8:35.
Okay. Comrade Lisa, you heard Chimaranga? Dylan, let me know if she heard Chimaranga. We might have to stop a little bit earlier than 8:45 to get people through the security to be there by 9.
Got it. Okay, got it. Got it. That's fine. Yeah.
So once we speak, should we then go inside or just wait something?
Just wait. It's like around 8:30, and maybe we could start to peel off if you really want to make sure that you get a seat in the main courtroom. But it would look kind of weird if everybody just starts peeling. All right, we got 1 minute left, comrade, before we start. Try not to look down. Student. Ready? All right. Uhuru, good morning. Morning. Okay, my name is Yejude Oromila. I am the president of the African National Women's Organization, and I salute everyone who is here in front of the Tampa Federal Courthouse for the not one day in prison for the Uhuru 3, not one day, as they go before the judge to be sentenced. The Uhuru 3, if you don't already know, is Omali Yeshitela, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and 2 organizers with the Uhuru movement, white reparations component, Penny Hess, chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and Jesse Neville, chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. On September 12, 2024, they were found not guilty of federal charges of acting as unregistered agents of Russia, but were convicted of a contradictory charge of conspiracy to act as an unregistered agent of Russia. They are appealing the conspiracy conviction. While they were found not guilty of the most serious charge, acting as agents of Russia, the government still seeks a sentence of 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine, each on the conspiracy of conviction. For the past 2.5 years, Chairman O'Malley has led the building of the anti-colonial free speech movement, joined by scores of organizations and individuals representing a broad political spectrum, but united in this fight for free speech for everyone. I want to express our deepest appreciation to all these powerful supporters who have traveled to the Tampa Bay area to stand with the Uhuru 3, including Charles Barron, former New York State Assemblyman and New York City Councilman, Cam Howard, Reparations United, Willie Massar Riggs, who popularized the 1960s Black Power demand, Ithia Wengaza, student nonviolent coordinating committee veteran, Paulette Daltail, Free Leonard Peltier Committee, Ford Churchill, from the indigenous rights activist and author. Caleb Maupin, who is Center for Political Innovation. Professor Natu Saito, a law professor and author. Pam Africa of the Free Mumia campaign. Betty Davis of the New York City radio show and the New Abolitionist Movement. Belinda Parker Brown from Louisiana International. Frank Lawrence from the Julian Assange Defense Committee. Casey Mill and Alvaro Montealegre from Tampa Alliance Against Racism and Political Oppression. Mark Freeman of Hands Off Cuba. Jennifer Sullivan from Florida Green Party. Ramsey Garby from Palestinian Youth Movement. Aiden Bennett from Tallahassee Community Action. Ruth Beltran from Party for Socialism and Liberation. And others who I might not have mentioned, but will have a chance to speak. Now we're going to hear a few words from the well-known and respected organizers. And at 8:40, 8:45, we're going to peel off to go into the courts to get everybody through security. And there are, just as a reminder, there are no cameras or recording devices or any digital devices that are allowed in the courtroom. So if you have them on, you have to get rid of them before we get into the courtroom. And for those watching online, we will be running back down here to the steps of the courthouse as each of the sentences are delivered. Once all 3 sentences are handed down, we will hold another press conference at around 12 o'clock, where we will hear directly from the Uhuru 3 and their attorneys. First, I want to call up to give their remarks is Charles Barron, our former New York City Assemblyman.
Uhuru comrades, not a day in jail. Not a day in jail. We don't even want any fines. We ain't giving you no money. No fines. No fines. No fines. Sister Sight last night told us about an elephant that was being attacked by a lion. And the elephant stomped his elephant foot on the ground, and it was heard 6,000 miles away by other elephants. Well, the warriors of the Uhuru movement stomped their feet on the ground, and we came from New York, we came from Chicago, we came from California, we came from Florida, we came from all over the nation, and the voice, the stomp was heard in Africa, in the Caribbean. It was heard all over the world, and we have come today from New York. I'm also known as Mr. Inez Barron. You know, my wife. We have a radio show on WBAI, Speaking Truth to Power. So we came today to say, listen, our struggle has just begun. This is a hypocritical decision. You can't say that they were not agents of Russia, but they were conspiring to be some. It's a contradiction. It's a contradiction. We say, let them go now, take them out, get out of court now, let's get back into the streets. So on behalf of New York, on behalf of the December 12th movement. They were out there the first day. On behalf of my wife, Inez Barron, I think we have a combined 152 years on earth. We have a combined 110 years in the struggle. We've been married for 42 years. And we have a combined 34 years in the State Assembly and the New York City Council. I think we have some authority to speak on this issue. So the struggle continues. We weren't on trial. The American injustice system was on trial. We were not on trial. And I just got to mention in New York City, that cowardly murderer who choked Neely to death, Jordan Neely to death on a subway train. This was a man who was homeless, the kind of man that Yeshiteli would fight for, Penny would fight for, Jesse would fight for. He was homeless. He said, I'm hungry. I want something to drink. And this cowardly, low-life Marine put him in a chokehold. 30 seconds, the train stopped. Everybody left the train. Nobody was in danger. He had no weapon. He used to dance like Michael Jackson. This coward held him for another 6 minutes in a deadly chokehold, choked him to death. The courts let him go. He was let go. So he wasn't on trial. Mayor Adams was on trial because he should have had a house. Mayor Adams was on trial because he should have had a job. The injustice system. So when we fight for justice in New York, we're fighting for justice here. We say the only solution is revolution. Revolution in our lifetime. I'm not even passing the torch to the next generation. I want to see it now and in my lifetime. So forward ever, backward never. Forward ever, forward ever. Black power. Say it like you mean it. Black power. Straight ahead.
Uhuru. Thank you so much, Charles. Our next up is going to be Cam Howard from Reparations United. Uhuru.
Uhuru, not one day, not one day, not one day in jail for the Uhuru 3. In September, the jury came back with a verdict of not guilty. They also came back with a verdict that said that the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, works for Black people. They came back with a verdict that said Penny Hess works for Black people. They came back and said that Jesse Nevels works for Black people. And what is the work that Jesse, Penny, and the chairman do? They work to inform Black people of the crimes that this country has committed against Black people for 400 years. And then they work to organize Black people to demand their righteous reparations as due. That's what the jury heard, and that's what the verdict they came back with. But the judge heard the same thing. And if the jury came back with a not guilty verdict, with a verdict that the chairman, Penny, and Jesse works for Black people, the judge has to do what is right and release them fully today and say not one day in jail for the Uhuru 3. Uhuru, not one day in jail for the Uhuru 3.
Uhuru. Thank you, Cam. Next up will be Willie Massar Ricks. Uhuru. Radio, FCC.
The only someone and only force that's on trial today is the United States government. And we find them guilty for crimes worldwide. And we want the world to know that these guilty forces will one day be brought to their knees. And they have no right to take us to jail and take us to court. The jails are filled with Black men and the courts are filled with hatred. And we must fight them, and we're fighting for our liberation, and we're fighting for the liberation of all African people worldwide. We know your crimes in Vietnam. We know your crimes in Palestine. We know your crimes in Africa. We know your crimes to the people that lived on this land before you came here and committed genocide on them. So all the jails and prisons need to be burnt down, and the people need to be liberated and given their freedom. And you stole us from Africa. You robbed us. You have continued to murder us. You put us in jail. And now you're letting our great leaders die in jail, like H. Rap Brown. Free Munir. Free Africa. Free Palestine. Long live revolution worldwide. And death to capitalism, death to imperialism, death to settler colonialism, long live socialism. Everybody deserve food, medicine, and education, and that's the only thing that Uhuru 3 are fighting for. So again, Black Power. Black Power. Thank you.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Willie. Next up is Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector and whistleblower. Scott Ritter, come up, please. Thank you. Uhuru.
Well, thank you very much. It's very difficult to follow the impassioned pleas that I just heard, and I will not attempt to replicate it. I stand here as somebody who I have told Chairman O'Malley over and over again, I am not you. You are not me. We are not alike in many things. When I started this journey with him, I didn't know anything about him or his movement. And he knew a little bit about me, but the point is, it's not what separates us that brings me here. It's what unites us. The injustice that is being done in the name of justice. See, Chairman O'Malley taught me a couple things. He taught me that he knows more about the Constitution of the United States than I do, because he had to earn it the hard way. That when the Constitution was written, it was written for people like me. It wasn't written for people like him, because his people were slaves. And then over the years, my people forgot what the Constitution was about, what the freedoms enshrined in the Constitution represented, and his people had to earn it the hard way, fighting over and over and over again. And they were ignored over and over and over again by people like me. Well, I'm not going to ignore it anymore. What needs to be recognized right here and right now, and I wish there were more people here, because what's happening today is the battle of America for America by a great American, Chairman O'Malley and the Uhuru 3. This is the battle for everything we claim to stand for. This is the battle of freedom of speech. If you take away freedom of speech, there is no America, and there's no greater warrior today for freedom of speech than Chairman O'Malley and the Uhuru 3. I don't know what's going to happen in this building. Maybe something not good, hopefully something decent. We cannot expect justice to be served here. But what we can do is recognize that this is not the end. This is the beginning of a struggle that must unite us all, because if we lose here, we lose everything. I promised Chairman O'Malley one thing. When I met him, I said, I will do my best to learn more about you. But I can't learn if they silence him. I can't learn if they don't allow him to speak. So freedom of speech doesn't exist unless you're free to speak. And that's what this battle is about. The battle for America by one of the great Americans of all time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Scott. Next, I'm going to bring up Aia Waza, a former student nonviolent committee coordinator. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Well, as I said to the chairman last night, we have gone full circle. He has closed the gap. You know, we've been wandering around for the past 50 years trying to figure out in what direction we ought to be moving and what our goals ought to be. The courage and the vision and the direction of Chairman O'Malley Yesitala and the Uhuru 3, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, have made into flesh the call for Black power and self-determination and the respect and the appreciation of the dignity and worth of all humanity in the institutions that they have built, in the stands that they have taken. Today, we claim the victory. We give them no power, no authority. We stand victorious because when the people fight the battles, the people win. And the people have spoken, and the people won. Uhuru.
Thank you so much, Afia. Next up, I'm going to introduce to the mic Zaki Baruti from the Universal African Peoples Organization.
Uhuru, Black Power. Let me just say again, this attack on the Uhuru 3 is a reflection of the historic attack on Black leadership. All we need to do is look at the attack on the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. We look on the attack on Malcolm X. We look on the attack of the Black Panther Party. And we're here to say no more, no more. Also, I just want to remind people that Biden just pardoned his criminal son. If he had any ounce of honesty within his soul, then automatically that should be a pardon for the Uhuru 3 who should not be on trial in the first place. So again, our struggle, as has been said previously, is a struggle for justice, equality, and liberation. And we're here to say that we're claiming victory. That's right. Because you cannot stop the progress of progressive liberation for people, not just here in this country, but throughout the world. So freedom now, free the Uhuru 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zaki. Next up, we're going to introduce Parette D from Free Leonard Peltier Committee.
Excuse me. Good morning. Thank you for coming. I represent official Leonard Peltier Committee. Leonard is right here in Florida, just up the road, about 60 miles in Coleman. Coleman has been locked down consistently, week after week, not allowing the men showers to get out of their cells. Leonard has been ill, and we have asked for mercy transfer to a medical facility. And we're going to ask Biden to adopt him. And that way we know he will come home. So from now until January 21st, please call the White House, ask for clemency for Leonard Peltier so he can go back to Turtle Mountain, which is his reservation, and live out the rest of his life. He was just 80, and he has done 50 years inside. So free Leonard, free all political prisoners. Thank you.
Thank you, Parette. Thank you so much for that statement. Free Leonard. Next, we want to bring up to the stage Ward Churchill, Indigenous rights activist and author. Uhuru.
Hoka. Hoka hey. The American Indian Movement, Colorado, and elsewhere, from Denver. I bring solidarity. As my sister said, with regard to our fighter, our front line, our never give an inch, Leonard Peltier, in prison 50 years for something they knew before the fact he never did. But they needed someone to represent the cost and consequences struggling for liberation. That's nothing unique. That's nothing unique at all. People have mentioned Marcus Garvey. They could have mentioned the African Blood Brotherhood. They could have mentioned any of a number of people running and movements running from there in a consistent, steady stream to Malcolm X, to the Black Panther Party, to the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru 3, They'll carry this on so long as we let them carry it on. But the first point in not allowing them to carry it on is to continue the struggle, to never back up. As a man put it in a song, some people bend, some people break. I'm the other kind. We must be the other kind. We, the people who cannot, they say, stand on our own steps in order to conduct this press conference this morning. We never give up. We never back up. We press forward. And I will say this, as it used to be said, black power to black people. Red power to red people. Brown power to the brown people. And I will say, human power to all people. Right on.
Thank you so much, Ward. Next up, we want to bring to the mic Paul Pumphrey from Friends of the Congo.
We're here once again to witness this government carry out injustice against righteous people who are fighting for justice. When we look at the Congo today, we see that the U.S. government uses U.S. tax dollars to implement the killing of millions of people. Why? Because they want to rob the minerals out of the Congo. This injustice must stop. I encourage people who are not aware of what's going on with U.S. tax dollars in the Congo to go to our website, Friends of the Congo. But again, when we look at the Uhuru 3, there's another example of when people stand up for justice, when people stand up for saying what is right, this government tries to shut them down. We say no. We say we stand up for justice and we will challenge this government, whether it's doing injustice in the Congo or whether it's doing injustice right here in Florida. Peace and justice is what we want. This is what we're fighting for. We have a government that just overspends our tax dollars on the military machine. It must come to an end if we're ever going to have justice in this world today. So I say free the Uhuru 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Next up, I'm going to introduce Natu Saito, law professor and author.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to say that this case is not about any foreign governments. This case is about the empowerment of people of African descent in this country. And this morning, we are going to see just how dangerous those who would protect the status quo find it to be when people organize to speak the truth about the history of this country, to demand just redress under international law for historic wrongs, and organize to empower people at a community level. That's what we're going to see this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natsu. Next, please come up Caleb Maupin from Center for Political Innovation.
None of us here ever had the opportunity to vote for the FBI. The FBI is not the elected government of the United States, but they seem to think that they are. If you look at what the FBI did in our previous election, covering up the Hunter Biden laptop scandal because they felt that Joe Biden should win the election. And if you look at the details of this case, the FBI seems to believe it is above the law. I would encourage people to look into the testimony that went on and the conversations, or I guess the revelations that went on the witness stand. How it was revealed that the indictment that was leveled against the Uhuru Three contained information that the FBI agents could not verify when they got up on the stand, and that the FBI has engaged in all kinds of dishonest activities. If they had told the truth about what evidence they had, this case never would have even gone to trial to begin with. And the FBI is putting itself above the law, and this is a threat to the freedom of all Americans. This is a threat to our civil liberties. This is a threat to our democratic rights. And I must say that the jury came back and said that it was very clear the Uhuru Three were not acting as agents of Russia. So based on that, there should be no prison time, no jail time. This entire trial should be thrown out. This whole case should be thrown out. But I must also say that I don't consider the activities of the Uhuru Three to be working against the interests of the United States. They travel around the world. They're connecting us with different countries, and they're working in the interests of America. Because the only future that America is ever going to have is with the new economy that is emerging in the world today. The Western financial system is falling, and the new economy of the world today, which is in Africa, which is in Russia, which is in China, that is the future. And the only future America will ever have is to be part of that economy, connecting us with people around the world, making America really a country that could trade and interact with the world in a more prosperous way, in a win-win way, a way based on win-win cooperation, not a zero-sum game. That is the future. So there should be no jail time. The conviction for this conspiracy charge needs to be completely thrown out. The FBI needs to be charged for the way that they conducted themselves in this case and the way they are violating the freedoms of Americans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Throw out that conspiracy charge. That's what we're talking about right now. So next up, we want to bring up Pam Africa of the Free Mumia campaign.
Uhuru, free Mumia, free Mumia, free the Fantastic Three. Yes, the fantastic, phenomenal three who brought all of us here together. This government is a bunch of fools. A bunch of fools, and because what they have done through the terrorism, and they should be made to pay financially as well, and they should do jail time because they broke every law of humanity when they went into our community, kidnapped, terrorized, and shut down the radio programs that was had. They tried to stop the programs of educating people in the community, giving jobs to the community. I'm saying, the charges against Uhuru Three is clear. They're false. They were found innocent. There's nothing to do now, and because it's evident. Each and every last one of us is here because of the evidence. When our brother talked about the sister who said about the elephant who stomped his feet, and thousands came, and we're the forefront of that thousand, the ones that you will see. But we represent millions. I said millions around the world that is watching and prepared to do what is necessary if they do the wrong thing as they usually do. With that, I'm saying, we're waiting, we're listening, because that elephant foot is up like this. And God help these monsters if the foot hit the ground. Yeah. Long live revolution. Long live the Uhuru Three. Long live the people who came here on the front line to witness and to do what is necessary.
So much. Free Mumia. Free Mumia. Free Mumia. Next up, I'm going to bring up Betty Davis from the New Abolitionist Movement.
Hello, family. Hello, comrades. Your whole family. I'm standing because Nat Turner couldn't be here today. I'm standing because Denmark Vesey couldn't be here today. I'm standing for Tecumseh too, and I'm standing for Harriet Tubman. Can I testify? Can I testify? I say this is an injustice. I say that when people feel the government is going the wrong way, it's when the government is the people that you have justice. And so we're standing here to say we elect them. They do not select us. And we will not tolerate the Uhuru 3 going one day to jail. You cannot go to jail for caring about children. You should not go to jail for caring about vegetables and fresh food in the morning. You shouldn't go to jail for housing for the homeless. You shouldn't go to jail for bringing food to a food desert. And so we're saying that we are not going to tolerate this. Our hearts won't stand for this. Our souls will die if this happens. And that's why we fight back. That's why we resist. And that's why you are all here. And that's why you're standing on the right side of history, and the right side of justice. And we're going to win. And the reason we're going to win is because justice is on our side. And that's what humans are all about. That's what makes us human. And we say we want human rights, we mean we want to defend each other from this kind of oppression. So thank you for letting me be a part of this circle, because this is a righteous circle. Thank you. You're horrible.
Uhuru Betty Davis. Next up, Belinda Parker Brown from Louisiana United International.
We're in the right place. It feels good. And we know that this is an attack against all of us. When it comes to our right to speak the truth to power, we come up under attack. So the whole world is watching that we will not tolerate our freedom of speech being attacked. That's all we have is our voices to speak the truth to power. So when it comes to the Uhuru 3, we know for a fact the FBI, the CIA, the United States government got it wrong. They got it wrong. Because the African Socialist Party have always been there for us in our community to educate us, to teach us how to defend ourselves, to teach us how to have self-determination. And the only reason why they came up under attack is because the Black Power blueprint to teach us self-determination. And that's the problem. What is it that they had a problem with the fact that it would say Black determination? They want to stop us from taking care of ourselves. They cannot do that. We're fed up. And it's time for us to stand for what's right, like Sister Betty said. We are on the right side with this one. And we all can unite on this one. And we know for a fact the FBI got it wrong. And we're saying not one step backwards. Free the Uhuru 3.
Thank you so much. Next up, Frank Lawrence from the Julian Assange Defense Committee.
Julian Assange was put into a position where he had to plead guilty to the crime of journalism to avoid spending the rest of his life in a supermax prison in the US. He'd already been persecuted for 14 years and had already spent 5 years in a maximum security prison in the UK. Joe Biden proclaimed that we have freedom of the press and that journalism is not a crime. Evidently, it is a crime if you're exposed to the world US war crimes and US misdeeds. The Uhuru 3, Jesse Neville, Penny Hess and Chairman O'Malley criticized US policy towards Ukraine and Russia. Right. They characterized the Ukraine conflict as a US provoked proxy war against Russia. We have freedom of speech in this country as long as you don't criticize and expose the lies of the US warmongering policies. The Uhuru 3 met and communicated with some Russians. We have freedom of association as long as we don't associate with people from countries that the US government considers our enemies. The US government has no right to tell the Uhuru 3 who their enemies are or who their friends should be. That's right. Russia is not their enemy. Right. China is not their enemy. Iran is not their enemy. Venezuela is not their enemy. And Cuba is not their enemy. And while this charade has been taking place over the last couple of years, what has the Biden administration been doing? It has caused and supported genocide in Palestine. It is principally responsible for the destruction of Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of people have died in Ukraine unnecessarily. This war could have been avoided in December 2021 if the US had acknowledged the security concerns of Russia and told Russia that Ukraine will not be in NATO. Ukraine will never end up being in NATO. And while this charade has been taking place, Joe Biden has brought us to the brink of a nuclear war. All it takes is a mistake, a miscommunication, or a decision by a demented president, and all hell could break loose. And there are even some in Washington, D.C., who believe that we could survive a nuclear war and the U.S. would come out on top. And the death of millions of people is a price to be paid for US capitalism to run supreme and for US hegemony to continue. So the irony is that the three people who are in court today to be sentenced before a judge are Jesse Neville, Penny Hess, and Chairman O'Malley. It should be Joe Biden, Antony Blinken, and Sullivan who should be in court. They will never be held to account, just like George W. Bush wasn't held to account. The Uhuru 3 are heroes. They will go down in the history books. And I hope Joe Biden will go down as the villain of the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uhuru. Next up, I want to bring up Casey Mill and Alvaro Montealegre from Tampa Alliance Against Racism and Political Oppression. Are they here? Okay. Well, we're going to bring up Mark Freeman from the Machinists Union. Uhuru.
I came here from Los Angeles to represent the International Association of Machinists. Our local has taken a position in defense of the Uhuru 3. This is somewhat unique in the labor movement, but must be the way forward. For too long, the labor movement has remained separate and apart from political struggles against police brutality, in defense of a woman's right to choose, in support of immigrants' rights, LGBTQ. This needs to change. This is not solely a movement of African Americans and Black Americans. This must be a working class movement, a movement of the unions, of people of all colors and nationalities. It is only through the unity of working people in the working class that we will be able to make the necessary social change. And that must begin with this, the recognition that this attack on the Uhuru 3 is just like COINTELPRO, the same as the attack on Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, La Raza Unida Party, others, the Black Panthers. The labor movement must come forward, and there is a new generation of labor activists that are leading this now. That is the way forward. This will be a struggle to defend all working people who are under attack, a struggle for free speech, As we say in the labor movement, an injury to one is an injury to all.
Thank you so much, Mark. And we only have time for one more speaker. Is Jennifer Sullivan from the Florida Green Party here? Okay. Ramsey Garvey from Palestinian Youth Movement. All right. Aiden Bennett from Tallahassee Community Action. Zaid Muhammad. Okay, come on, brother. Come over here.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Not a day in jail. Not a day in jail. Not a day in jail. Hands off Omala Yeshitela. Hands off Penny Hess. Hands off Jesse Neville. Whole world is watching. And we stand here today. We stand here today like the Black Panther Party called in 1969 for a national united front against fascism. Fascism coming not just from one wing of the government or the other wing of the government, but from the government. We say no to fascism and yes to democracy. We say no to capitalism and yes to socialism. We say yes to free speech and no to repression. The time has come in the united front to stand here and stay the hands of this hypocritical national and international movement of terror for peace, justice, and freedom for all, and freedom for the Uhuru Three. Hands off the Uhuru Three. Hands off the Uhuru Three. Hands off the Uhuru Three. Let's pack this cord, and if we got to, shut it down. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Saeed. So we're going to have to end the press conference so that we can get everybody into the courtroom, hopefully in time for the 9 o'clock start time. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the sentences as they are announced. You can get all the announcements as they are made on our social media platforms of the Burning Spear Media and the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. So check us out. Thank you so much, Uhuru. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Uhuru,
okay, right?
and welcome to Burning Spear Media's coverage of the sentencing of the Uhuru Three and the anti-colonial free speech trial of the century. We just heard so many powerful statements from the broad array of supporters who have traveled to Tampa to stand with the Uhuru Three. As we wait to hear what the judge will decide in the sentencing of the Uhuru Three, we want to share with you some background on the historic fight back. We'll begin with a short video showing the impact of the violent multi-city FBI raids of 7 homes and offices of the Uhuru movement.
This is the FBI. You have a federal warrant for this address. Keep your hands up and follow orders. This is the FBI. We have a warrant for...
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out, something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here, that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
You need a breach? What do you need? Need one. I don't know. I'll told Ben the money. Thank you.
We will build a movement of white people that says hands off the Uhuru movement.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we had the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of black people around the world.
For 9 months after those raids on July 29th, 2022, the Uhuru Three were in a legal limbo. They hadn't been named or charged, but they had been described as unindicted co-conspirators in a Department of Justice indictment of a Russian citizen. In April 2023, Chairman Amalia Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville were indicted on 2 charges. The foundational charge was to act as an unregistered agent of Russia. The secondary charge was conspiracy to act as an unregistered agent. The feds win 99% of their criminal cases, mostly through plea bargains because nobody wants to fight the feds with all the resources they have at their disposal. Chairman Amalia stood up and built a broad-based public campaign to fight back and expose the U.S. government for attacking free speech and the work of the Uhuru movement to build African independent economic programs to feed, clothe, and house Black people. The Uhuru Three anti-colonial free speech trial of the century took place the first week in September of this year, 2024. On September 12th, the Uhuru Three were found not guilty of acting as unregistered agents of Russia, but guilty of conspiring to act as unregistered agents of Russia. We bring you a recording of Chairman Amalia Yeshitela's response to that verdict.
The Uhuru Three verdict is in. We work for Black people, not Russia. The United States government lied and lost. The Uhuru movement told the truth and won. On September 12, 2024, a jury in the federal courthouse in Tampa, Florida, repudiated the more serious charge of the United States government frame-up of the Uhuru Three by finding myself, along with Penny Hess and Jesse Neville, not guilty of being agents of the Russian government. The prosecutors unleashed a barrage of lies and distortions of the law, along with deliberately confusing jury instructions to mislead the jury into returning an inconsistent verdict, convicting us of the lesser charge of conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States, which we intend to appeal and are confident we will win. But more importantly, the jury's not guilty verdict on the Russian agents charge means that the jurors agreed with the legitimacy of our efforts to advocate for the liberation of Africa and African people. We congratulate the jury for their ability to see through the U.S. government's attempt to criminalize criticism by Black people of the U.S. government's treatment of African people in the United States. The jury rejected the bogus charge that African people require leadership from Russians or by groups characterized as white to define and lead our struggle to end domestic colonialism. We salute the people's multifaceted, ubiquitous movement for anti-colonial free speech and democratic rights, whose tireless and heroic organizing contributed profoundly toward this massive victory. The United States government did not intend to lose their case on the charge that the Uhuru movement was working for the Russians. Their political goal was to use the foreign agent charge to deny the legitimacy of the Black liberation movement when we criticized the United States government for its treatment of African people. Their charge that we are foreign agents was meant to mute the significance of our criticisms of the killings of Black men and women by police, the mass incarceration of our people, the gentrification and other forms of colonial terror in our communities, by saying that it was actually the Russians who told us to say it. The US government expended a tremendous amount of resources, at least tens of millions of dollars and hundreds of FBI agents and other government personnel to carry out this sham trial. They stole from our properties at least 13 terabytes of data, the equivalent of 2.5 million books worth of information. They put 14 witnesses on the stand to present their evidence, all of them FBI agents except for 2 so-called expert witnesses who admitted they knew nothing about our case and claimed they couldn't remember how much the US government had paid them to testify against us. We defeated them without calling any witnesses to the stand. Instead, our incredible legal team used their opening and closing arguments, along with the withering cross-examination of the government's witnesses, to educate the jury about who we are and what our struggle is about. Our attorneys told the jury that Chairman Omali Yeshitela is a revolutionary who is not for sale. We showed evidence of Brenningsville newspapers and other political documents by our party dating back to the 1970s, illustrating that we have always fought for more than 50 years for the liberation of our people. Under cross-examination, one FBI agent after another was forced to admit that there was no evidence that we ever agreed to work under the direction or control of Russia. The lead investigator from the FBI even had to admit under oath that the FBI and the Department of Justice knowingly lied to the people when they indicted us for election interference, despite the fact that not a shred of evidence of anything of the sort was ever identified. The jury saw right through it and was able to declare that the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela have never worked for the Russians. We have always worked for Black people. This was a political trial. The colonial state's goal was bigger than simply convicting me and putting me in prison. Their failed efforts to convince the jury that we are foreign agents was part of a larger political goal to forever discredit speech by Black people and other colonized people against our oppression at the hands of the United States government. The US government told the jury that when we demanded reparations to our people, it was the Russians who told us to do that. The jury said no. They told the jury that when we fought to expose and end the genocide against African people in the United States and around the world, it was the Russians who told us to do it. The jury said no. They told the jury that when we go around the world to win friends and allies to our struggle for freedom, it was the Russians who made us do that. The jury said no. The US government lied and they lost. We told the truth and we won. The jury saw the evidence presented both by the prosecutors and by our attorneys of more than 5 decades of consistent revolutionary work to free our people from colonial oppression. They saw that we are principled and passionate about freedom. The jury heard me speak through videos of presentations that were screened by both sides. Our legal team was brilliant. We applaud the relentless work by our attorneys, Addie Griffin, Mutake Akbar, Leonard Goodman, Angela Rainey, and Tom Inskeep. But here's what we are calling on everyone to do. Number 1, submit letters to the judge as we approach our sentencing date scheduled for November 25th, after which we intend to file a motion to appeal the conspiracy conviction. Stay tuned to handsoffuhuru.org for more details. 2, make plans to come to Tampa, Florida on November 25th to pack the courthouse for our sentencing hearing. 3, mobilize for a massive anti-colonial free speech mobilization in Washington, D.C. on November 2nd, 2024, the annual Black People's March on the White House, sponsored by the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. This will be an anti-colonial march led by Africans, Mexicans, Palestinians, indigenous, Filipino, and other colonized peoples. 4, continue to stand with the Uhuru movement and the African liberation struggle. Support, protect, and defend our dual power programs for African working class economic development and self-determination. 5, continue to donate to the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund at handsoffuhuru.org/donate. 6, finally, the most important thing you can do right now is to inform the world that the US government lied and lost. The Uhuru movement told the truth and won. The verdict is in. Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party are not for sale. We have our own agency. We are our own liberators. We don't work for the Russians, we work for Black people, and we will continue to do so until all African people and the oppressed peoples of the world are free. Uhuru.
As you heard in that video from the chairman, following the verdict, the Hands Off Uhuru campaign called on supporters to write letters to the judge in support of the Uhuru Three, speaking to the character of each and requesting the most lenient sentence possible so that they could continue their work in the community. The campaign had an ambitious goal to collect 500 letters for each of the Uhuru Three. Supporters answered the call and surpassed that goal, submitting a total of over 1,600 letters. We now share with our viewers the thank you messages from the Uhuru Three following this profound letter writing campaign.
Uhuru, brothers, sisters, and comrades, this is Chairman Omali Shatella. I want to express my deep, most profound appreciation for all of you who helped us to meet our goal of 1,500 letters to be sent to the judge prior to our sentencing on December 16th in Tampa, Florida. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope many of you will be able to come to Tampa, Florida, to the federal courthouse to be there with us when we face the judge for sentencing. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Uhuru, this is Penny and Jesse, of the Uhuru Three under the leadership of Chairman Omali Shatella. And we're here to thank all of you for the amazing, powerful, and very moving and important letters that you took time to write, character letters in support of Chairman Omali Shatella and Jesse and myself. It is a very important tactic of this whole campaign. The outpouring of all of you was so powerful. We are winning.
Uhuru, Chairman Penny, and everybody, I just want to join in thanking every single person that sent in a character letter for Chairman Omali Shatella, for Chairwoman Penny Hess, and myself. The people have spoken. Over 1,500 letters came in. The judge is going to have to read those letters. The people have spoken and said, hands off Chairman Omali Shatella, hands off the Uhuru Three. So we'll see everybody in Tampa, Florida on December 16th for the sentencing hearing, where we will pack the court and demand not one day in prison.
And thanks so much to Dr. Aisha Fields, Lauren Villa, and Comrade Len Demmer, who did a great job pulling in these letters and coordinating this aspect of this very important strategy. So thank you again, Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Hands off Uhuru. Hands off Africa. We are winning.
Uhuru.
Leading up to the sentencing hearings, another way the Hands Off Uhuru campaign and Burning Spear Media raised awareness about the case of the Uhuru Three was through a series of reenactments of highlights from the trial transcripts in the Reader's Theater format. That revealed the weakness of the government's case and exposed the government's conspiracy to attack freedom of speech and the African liberation movement. In today's broadcast, as we wait for breaking news, we will be replaying the Uhuru Three trial reenactments, starting with episode 1. This episode shared the background of the case and the indictment, where the government set a precedent in using a foreign agent statute to criminalize pure political speech. It also featured excerpts from the attorney's opening arguments and excerpts from the indictment and pretrial motions, jury selection, and the judge's initial instructions to the jury. Let's watch the Uhuru Three trial reenactment, episode 1.
I'm Talmadge, and we're going to talk to you through the story of the Uhuru Three's anti-colonial free speech trial of the century.
And before we begin the reenactment, I need you to let you know that the Uhuru Three were found not guilty of acting as agents of the Russian government. In a contradictory and unjust verdict, they were found guilty of conspiring to act as agents of the Russian government. And I'll let you know my name is Mariah, and they will return to the Tampa Federal Courthouse on December 16 for their sentencing hearing. The government plans to lock up our 83-year-old chairman, Omali, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville for 5 years and to fine them $250,000.
We say not one day in prison. All freedom-loving people are encouraged to attend the sentencing hearing to show your support for the Uhuru Three. You can be part of history. Learn more at handsoffuhuru.org.
So back to the beginning of this precedent-setting case, on July 29, 2022, the FBI conducted violent military pre-dawn raids on 7 homes and offices of the Uhuru Black Freedom Movement, including that of its founder and leader, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Employing tanks, drones, flashbang grenades, and battering rams, flak-jacketed soldiers trained laser-guided automatic weapons on the bodies of then 81-year-old Chairman Omali and his wife, Onazane Yeshitela, as they emerged from their front door in an impoverished Black neighborhood in North St. Louis. No arrests were made, but $40,000 in damage was done to the 7 properties, and the FBI seized all of the occupants' computers, phones, hard drives, and boxes of files.
9 months later, on April 18, 2023, the Uhuru Three Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the 2 leaders of the Uhuru movement's White Solidarity and Reparations component, Penny Hess and Jesse Neville, were indicted on 2 baseless charges of acting as unregistered agents of the Russian government and conspiring to act as unregistered agents of the Russian government. They reported for arraignment May 2023. They were put into leg irons, retained in holding cells, had their passports taken, and were released on bond. They are now required to report weekly to pretrial monitoring officers and to get permission from the government before traveling across state lines.
In September of 2024, the week-long trial of the Uhuru Three was held in Tampa Federal Court. The court was packed with supporters from around the U.S. and across the political spectrum. The trial was assigned to the courthouse's largest courtroom, which quickly filled up and observers spilled into a designated overflow room.
Burning Spur Media is proud to present a 3-part reenactment of the historic Uhuru Three anti-colonial free speech trial of the century, where the government's conspiracy to gut the First Amendment was revealed.
In today's episode 1, we'll read excerpts from the indictment and the pretrial motions, and we'll bring you into the courtroom for jury selection and the judge's initial instructions to the jury.
In episode 2, we'll present excerpts from the opening arguments in the case and reenact the examination and cross-examination of key government witnesses.
And in the final episode 3, we'll take you back inside the courtroom to see what the jury actually saw as the Uhuru Three attorneys presented their evidence. We'll also reenact excerpts from the closing arguments, jury instructions, the verdict, and even hear Chairman Omali's response to that verdict.
We'll begin with the so-called Department of Justice press release issued on April 18, 2023, the day the indictment came down.
U.S. citizens and Russian intelligence officers charged with conspiring to use U.S. citizens as illegal agents of the Russian government. Defendants sought to sow discord, spread pro-Russia propaganda, and interfere in elections within the United States. A federal grand jury in Tampa, Florida, returned a superseding indictment charging 4 U.S. citizens and 3 Russian nationals with working on behalf of the Russian government and in conjunction with the Russian Federal Security Service, the FSB, to conduct a multi-year foreign malign influence campaign in the United States. Among other conduct, the superseding indictment alleges that the Russian defendants recruited, funded, and directed U.S. political groups to act as unregistered, illegal agents of the Russian government and sow discord and spread pro-Russia propaganda. The indicted intelligence officers in particular participated in covertly funding and directing candidates for local office within the United States. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service allegedly weaponized our First Amendment rights, freedoms Russia denies its own citizens, to divide Americans and interfere in elections in the United States, said Assistant Attorney General Matthew G. Olson of the Justice Department's National Security Division. Efforts by the Russian government to secretly influence U.S. elections will not be tolerated, said Assistant Attorney General Kenneth A. Polite Jr. of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. As today's announcement demonstrates, the Criminal Division is committed to eradicating foreign malign influence from the U.S. political system and helping ensure the integrity of our elections. Among other illegal activities, the superseding indictment alleges that Ayanov, Sudakolov, and Popov conspired to directly and substantially influence democratic elections in the United States by clandestinely funding and directing the political campaign of a particular candidate for local office in St. Petersburg, Florida in 2019. As part of the campaign, Ayanov allegedly recruited members of political groups within the United States, including the following indicted defendants: Amalia Shatella, Penny Joanne Hess, Jesse Neville.
The DOJ concludes their press release with a disingenuous disclaimer that reads, an indictment and a complaint are merely an allegation. All defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law.
You see that? From the beginning, they bring this false accusation that the campaign of a Uhuru movement member running for local office in St. Petersburg, Florida, was directed and funded by Russian government.
And then you'll hear the government's main witness, lead investigator, FBI agent Kelly Bowen, on the stand under oath admit that they had no evidence whatsoever to show any election interference in those election campaigns of the Uhuru movement.
Yes, we'll hear that testimony during episode 2 of the reenactment when we get to the examination and cross-examination of the government's witnesses.
So next, we'll look at the actual indictment, which can be reviewed in full on handsoffuhuru.org.
The grand jury charges count 1. Point 1, from at least as early as October of 2013, Alexander Viktorovich Ayanov worked with officers of the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation, the FSB, to use members of various U.S. political groups as foreign agents of Russia within the United States, without prior notification to the Attorney General. Working under FSB supervision and with FSB support, Ayanov recruited members of these political groups within the United States and other countries, including Ukraine, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Ireland, to attend conferences in Russia. These conferences were sponsored by the anti-globalization movement of Russia and funded by the Russian government. At these conferences, Ayanov entered in a partnership with certain U.S. separatist groups who were advocating for separation from the authority of the United States, including groups from Florida and California. Thereafter, Ayanov exercised direction or control over these groups on behalf of the FSB. Ayanov also monitored and regularly reported on their activities to the FSB. Point 2, specifically, Ayanov provided financial support to these groups on behalf of the FSB, directed these groups to publish pro-Russian propaganda, as well as other information designed to cause dissension in the United States and to promote secessionist ideologies, coordinated and funded action by these groups within the United States that was designed to further Russian interests, and coordinated coverage of these groups' activities in Russian media outlets. Point 3, among Ayanov's many illegal activities as an action of the FSB were his efforts, in conjunction with Moscow-based FSB officers, Sukadolov, Popov, and other FSB officers, to interfere directly and substantially in democratic elections in the United States by clandestinely funding and directing the political campaign of a particular candidate. Specifically, and as set forth in more detail below, Popov, Sukadolov, and other FSB officers supervised Ionov's efforts to actively direct the campaign of a candidate for local political office in St. Petersburg, Florida in 2019, with Popov expressly referring to this effort on behalf of the FSB as, quote, our election campaign. Point 4. Ionov and Popov intended that this election interference plot extend beyond the 2019 election cycle in St. Petersburg, Florida.
So again, this focus on this lie about Russian election interference in a local electoral candidate fielded by the Uhuru movement in St. Petersburg, Florida. In episode 2, you'll hear directly from the court's own transcript the words of the government's lead witness, FBI agent Kelly Bowen, admitting that the government has no evidence on such interference and that there appears to have been no interference by the Russian government into the Uhuru movement's electoral campaigns, something that the government knew when they issued the indictment and their intentionally inaccurate press releases. So the indictment goes on.
The conspiracy. Beginning on an unknown date, but at least as early as in or around November of 2014, and continuing until on or about July 29th, 2022, in the Middle District of Florida, Russia, and elsewhere, the defendants did knowingly and willfully combine, conspire, and agree with each other and other persons known and unknown to the grand jury to commit an offense against the United States. That is, to act as an agent of a foreign government and foreign officials, to wit, the Russian Federation and officials of that government, without prior notification to the Attorney General, as required by law in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 951A. The overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy and to effect the objects thereof, at least one of the co-conspirators committed or caused to be committed the following overt acts, among others, in the Middle District of Florida and elsewhere.
Let me explain for the layman. An overt act is defined as an act performed by any member of the contrived conspiracy, which is done for the purpose of furthering or carrying out the ultimate intent of the agreement, or which would naturally accomplish the objective of the conspiracy.
Okay, Talmadge, but in the case of the Uhuru 3, the object of the alleged conspiracy is to sow discord on behalf of the Russian government, under its direction and control. So the indictment goes on to list what the Department of Justice calls the overt acts of their bogus conspiracy, which we'll summarize here.
2015, Chairman Amalia Yusatella travels to Moscow, Russia, at the invitation of non-governmental organizations and returns to Moscow a few months later to speak at a conference titled The Dialogue of Nations. 2015, the Uhuru movement publishes a petition charging the United States with genocide and gathering over 130,000 signatures. In 2016, the Uhuru movement conducts a poor city reparation emancipation tour to organize community testimony to the United Nations, fact-finding tour led by Moray, Falcone, daughter of the iconic African revolutionary Franz Falcone, that resulted in the UN's first ever call for reparations to African people. In 2016, the Burning Spear newspaper publishes an article opposing the ban of Russian athletes in the Olympics. In 2017, Jesse Neville runs for mayor of St. Petersburg, Florida, mayor on reparations platform. 2018, Penny Hess is indicted recipient of a Facebook message from Russian person about Human Rights Committee. In 2019, an unnamed, unindicted so-called co-conspirator runs for city council in St. Petersburg, Florida on a reparations platform. In 2020, Chairman Amalia Shatella speaks via Zoom at another Dialogue of Nations conference and issues a video statement congratulating the Donetsk People's Republic on its 6th anniversary. And in 2020, the African People's Socialist Party makes a public statement holding the U.S. and NATO responsible for Russia's defensive action in Ukraine.
So Talma, it's like, as we can see here, everything the Uhuru movement is actually accused of should enjoy full First Amendment protections of the free speech, freedom of association, and freedom of the press. There was no accusation of spying, violence, bribery, money laundering, drugs, kidnapping, weapons, or any such activity. Only speech, dissenting opinion that criticized the U.S. government's policies and actions. This, the first time these laws have ever been used against U.S. citizens for speech and opinion alone. This case sets a dangerous case law precedent for government repression of journalists, activists, and all citizens' rights to express dissenting opinions.
So that was count one, the conspiracy charge that carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. Now back to the indictment for the foundational charge, without which a conviction on conspiracy should not be possible.
Count 2. Point 1. The allegations set forth in paragraphs 1 through 23 of Section A of Count 1 of this superseding indictment are realleged and incorporated by reference herein. Point 2. Beginning on an unknown date, but at least as early as in or around November of 2014, and continuing until on or about July 29th, 2022, in the Middle District of Florida and elsewhere, the defendants, Amalia Shatella, aka Joseph Waller, Penny Joanne Hess, and Jesse Neville, aka Jesse Novelsky, aided and abetted by each other and by other persons, known and unknown to the grand jury, did knowingly act within the United States as an agent of a foreign government and foreign officials, to wit, the Russian Federation and officials of that government, without prior notification to the Attorney General, as required by law, in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 951A and 2. Signed by Roger B. Handberg, United States Attorney.
All right, y'all. Now that was count 2, the foundational charge that carries a maximum 10 years in prison. Now let's look at it again. To knowingly act within the United States as an agent of a foreign government and foreign officials, to wit, the Russian Federation and officials of that government without prior notification to the Attorney General.
This foundational charge must have a guilty verdict in order to form a basis for the conviction on count 1, the conspiracy charge. But as you will hear, misled by the government, the jury will return a contradictory verdict that acquits on one charge while convicting on another.
So beginning in February of 2023, attorneys filed a series of requests and appeals under the Freedom of Information Act on behalf of the Uhuru 3. They sought to expose a pattern of U.S. government surveillance and harassment of Uhuru movement organizers as part of the ongoing U.S. government counterinsurgency program to quash the African liberation movement.
In theory, Freedom of Information Act requests allow the public to access government records and documents that are not already available to the public. The stated goal of the FOIA system is to keep the government accountable to its citizens. In practice, the government withholds or redacts information at will.
The Freedom of Information Act request for Jesse Neville, it was denied, citing Exemption 7A, which allows the government to withhold requested records compiled for law enforcement purposes that would interfere with enforcement proceedings. Although government entities are statutorily required to respond to FOIA requests within 20 working days, more than 1 year later, the government has yet to reply to those requests made on behalf of Chairman Amalia Shatella and Penny Hess.
And And on July 17th, 2023, the Uhuru 3 attorneys filed a motion to dismiss the indictment. The motion to dismiss was filed by Penny Hessie's attorney, Leonard Goodman, and was subsequently adopted on behalf of the other two members of the Uhuru 3, Chairman Amalia Shatella and Jesse Neville. The motion is much too extensive to read in its entirety, and we encourage viewers to read the document in full. It's posted at handsoffuhuru.org in the About section. But when we return from a short break, we'll read sections from the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss.
Uhuru, Uhuru. My name is Soliana Bakel, and I am the managing editor of the Burning Spear newspaper, and I really hope that you're enjoying this program as much as I am. I want to salute our chairman, Amalia Shatella, who is the founder of the Burning Spear and who today faces 5 years in prison for speaking out on behalf of the African nation. And salute to Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella, whose tireless work as architect of the Black Power Blueprint is turning the chairman's vision of African self-determination into reality. If you've been following the news of the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial of the century, your best source of information has been the Burning Spear newspaper, theburningspear.com, the website, and the Burning Spear TV channel on YouTube. The current issue of the Burning Spear newspaper is entirely dedicated to a report and analysis of the trial of the Uhuru 3, as you can see on this beautiful cover that our layout has put together. As you'll see in the final episode of this reenactment, much of the evidence presented by the Uhuru 3 attorneys showing the consistent worldview and a steadfast commitment to African self-determination and independent agency came from the decades of reporting and editorial positions printed in the Burning Spear newspaper. Again, the oldest African liberation journal and continuous publication since the Black Power movement of the 1960s. So before we return to today's performance, we want to call on you to support this beacon of honest information, proudly biased in favor of and told from the perspective of the African working class and other colonized peoples around the world. Don't let the FBI tell you what you can read, think, or say. Help others to get access to the publications that the FBI does not want us to see. So founded in 1969, the Burning Spear newspaper is the oldest African liberation journal in continuous publication, like I said, since the 1960s, 1969 specifically. The official journal of the African People's Socialist Party, the Spear newspaper serves to unify and liberate the African nation forcibly dispersed by colonialism worldwide. Over the decades, the Burning Spear newspaper has served as the voice of the international African revolution. You can become a distributor of the Burning Spear newspaper. And let's make this newspaper that the government is so afraid of. They're spending millions of dollars to lock up its founder. Let's make it available to the people on the streets and in the neighborhoods of every city in this country. You can bring the Spear into a new city, or you can join up with comrades who are already selling the Spear in your city. I want to share with you some of the places where freedom-loving people are actively distributing the Spear. So in the Midwest, we're in Chicago and St. Louis. In the Northeast, we're in Philly, New York, Staten Island, and Boston. Across Florida, we're in St. Pete, Gainesville, Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Orlando. In Cali, we're in Oakland Bay Area, LA, and San Diego. In the Pacific Northwest, we're in Tacoma and Olympia, Washington. So you too can take a stand and support the right of African people to freedom of speech, freedom of association, and freedom of the press. We have a goal during this program to sign up 20 new distributors of the Burning Spear newspaper. I invite you to place an order for a bundle of Burning Spears right now at theburningspear.store. You can order a bundle of 25, 50, or 100, and you can go big or order 100 spears and get them into the hands of people in your community who are looking for the information and analysis that will free African people and create a world of peace, justice, and happiness for everyone. You can place a one-time order or place a recurring order so that you'll automatically receive your bundle of spears each month. Once again, don't let the government shut down this historic voice of liberation. So back to you, Mariah, Talmadge, and the Burning Spear Media Readers Theater Troupe. Uhuru.
Oh, wow. What a powerful, powerful, powerful piece of media, Celiana. Thank you there. And thank you, comrade. I hope everyone watching really orders a bundle or bundles of that Burning Spear newspaper. So next, we bring you selections from the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss. All right, we have that motion to dismiss here on the screen. Our comrade, Comrade Diane.
Yes, I'll go ahead. Motion to dismiss. Defendant Penny Hess, by her attorneys Leonard C. Goodman and Angela J. Rainey, pursuant to Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 12b2, and the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, hereby moves this honorable court to dismiss the indictment. In support of this motion, defendant states as follows.
The African People's Socialist Party, or APSP, was founded in 1972 by defendant Omali Yeshitela. The party's platform can be found on its website, apspuhuru.org. The APSP supports the rights of African people throughout the world to be free from colonialism, described as a condition of existence where a whole people is oppressively dominated by a foreign and alien state power for the purpose of economic exploitation and political advantage.
The APSP believes that all Black people are African people and are part of a single national entity. It believes that the vast resources of Africa belong to the African people and not to Western colonizers.
It also advocates free speech and political association, a guarantee of the right to work for the betterment and emancipation of Black people without fear of political imprisonment and the loss of life, limb, and livelihood.
The APSP oversees a broader network of organizations and programs which collectively comprise the overall Uhuru movement. The APSP publishes its own newspaper called The Burning Spear. Its Uhuru House Community Center in St. Petersburg houses a radio station operated by a nonprofit organization affiliated with the broader Uhuru movement.
During its half-century of existence, the APSP has consistently championed several issues. First, it seeks reparations, just economic compensation for the, quote, theft of human and material resources from Africa and its people, and for the centuries of genocide, oppression, and enslavement of our people, unquote.
Second, it opposes U.S. and Western European political, economic, and military interference in the affairs of Africa and African people throughout the world. Third, the APSP and Uhuru movement oversee programs that support the economic development and well-being of African people. This includes 3 centers in the United States, in St. Louis, Missouri, in St. Petersburg, Florida, and in Oakland, California. Through these centers, Uhuru-affiliated organizations operate farmers markets, recreation programs, and training programs for African women to become doulas. The Uhuru movement also operates several businesses, including Uhuru Foods and Pies and Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles.
As part of its advocacy on behalf of African peoples, the APSP chairman and other party members regularly travel to foreign countries and participate in conferences.
In 1981, the chairman attended the Managua Conference in solidarity with the FSLN government of Nicaragua.
In 1983, the chairman went to Belfast, Northern Ireland, to speak.
In 2002, the chairman was the keynote speaker at the 8th Congress of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania in Umtata, South Africa.
In 2004, the chairman spoke at the Global African Conference in Suriname that resolved to demand reparations.
In 2006, the chairman traveled to Southern Africa and met with former Namibian President Sam Nujoma.
In 2007, the chairman was the keynote speaker at a conference in Huelva, Spain, sponsored by a Spanish NGO.
In 2012, the chairman spoke on the legacy of Marcus Garvey in London, Paris, Berlin, Brussels, and Stockholm.
In 2015, he also spoke at a conference in Jamaica.
In 2019, the chairman traveled to Oxford Union to participate in a debate on African unity.
In 2015, APSP chairman made 2 trips to Moscow to attend conferences arranged by defendant Ayanov and his group called the Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia, the AGMR.
Contrary to the allegations in the indictment, the APSP did not conceal the party's associations with Russia and Russians. Rather, the APSP described its trips to Moscow in the Burning Spear, the same way it described its other trips.
Section 951 is unconstitutional as applied to Ms. Hess and the other APSP defendants. The indictment in this case directly targets political expression, a core First Amendment right. The government here is prosecuting the APSP defendants under 18 U.S.C. Section 951, a statute that criminalizes unregistered foreign agents operating in the United States. To be an agent of a foreign government under Section 951, a person must, quote, agree to operate, subject to foreign direction and control, unquote.
Here, the APSP defendants are not charged with helping Russia to achieve any particular action item in the United States, such as gaining extradition of a wanted dissident, freeing a prisoner, or obtaining relief from sanctions, nor are they charged with espionage or fraud. This case is about pure political speech and the right to advocate dissenting views. The overt acts charged in the indictment all relate to political speech and peaceable assembly. The APSP defendants are accused of speaking at conferences, peaceable rallies, and at multi-city speaking tours. They are accused of publishing articles in their own newspaper.
The indictment attempts to criminalize speeches in which defendants criticize NATO expansion eastward to Russia's border, the 2014 US-backed coup to remove Ukraine's Russia-friendly president and replace him with a US-EU puppet regime, and US policy to arm Ukraine to the teeth. Every one of these charged offenses are protected political speech under the First Amendment. None of the targeted speech of the APSP defendants was in itself unlawful or had any tendency to incite imminent lawless action, nor did it contain any obscenity which might fall outside First Amendment protections. Rather, the indictment here targets only protected speech.
The government here is using Section 951 to prosecute members of an activist group for political speech and activism in opposition to U.S. foreign policy. In so doing, this prosecution strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. It must be noted that the APSP defendants have a well-documented history of opposing U.S. efforts to interfere in other countries that predates Yeshitela's visit to Moscow by at least 4 decades. Thus, the suggestion in the indictment that the APSP defendants were speaking for Russia when they blamed the United States for provoking Russia into invading Ukraine is plainly untrue on its face.
Even a quick perusal of the archives of the APSP newspaper, The Burning Spear, and their published speeches shows example after example of the APSP's opposition to NATO expansion and US interference in Ukraine. In a 1982 Burning Spear article, the APSP described NATO as a Western military alliance designed to dominate the colonized peoples of the world.
In April 2014, more than a year before the APSP chairman's trip to Moscow, it published an article in the Burning Spear called, quote, Ukraine, Russia, EU, US, and the Crisis of Imperialism, unquote. This article criticized US interference in Ukraine and US involvement in a coup that overthrew democratically elected President Viktor Yanukovych and installed a US-EU puppet regime. In this article, the APSP sides with Russia in its struggle to prevent Ukraine from becoming aligned with NATO and the West.
The indictment does not allege that the APSP defendants ever agreed to advocate any position that did not align with their ideology. The government cannot remove constitutional protection from political speech by labeling it propaganda and disinformation. The government does not have monopoly on determining what is true and what is false. The fact that the APSP defendants are accused of opposing official government policy on an important matter of war and peace does not justify an exception to the rule.
Moreover, the views of these defendants that the government calls propaganda and disinformation are nearly identical to the views held by well-renowned public intellectuals such as Professors Jeffrey Sachs of Columbia University and John Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago.
In May 2023, Professor Sachs wrote a column for Common Dreams called "The War in Ukraine Was Provoked and Why That Matters to Achieve Peace." Herein, Sachs argued that the US provoked Russia's invasion first by its intention to expand NATO to Ukraine and Georgia in order to surround Russia in the Black Sea region by NATO countries, and second, by helping to install a Russophobic regime in Ukraine by the violent overthrow of Ukraine's pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych, in February 2014.
In March 2022, Professor Mearsheimer wrote a column for The Economist called John Mearsheimer on Why the West is Principally Responsible for the Ukrainian Crisis, in which he argued that the West, and especially America, is principally responsible for the crisis in Ukraine, which began in February 2014.
Professor Sachs was an advisor to 3 United Nations Secretary Generals and is the author of several books on foreign policy and economics. Professor Mearsheimer is the author of numerous books on security issues and international politics. No one has suggested that the published opinions of Professor Sachs and Mearsheimer are not protected speech.
This case would appear to be the first time in which a Section 951 prosecution has been challenged on First Amendment grounds, quite likely because it is the first case in which the government has used Section 951 to directly target political speech. The superseding indictment must be dismissed as to Ms. Hess and the other APSP defendants to avoid the chilling effect upon the exercise of First Amendment rights that may derive from the fact of this prosecution. Dismissal of the indictment as to Ms. Hess and the other APSP defendants is necessary not only to protect the First Amendment rights of these defendants, but also to protect the rights of other Americans whose speech may be inhibited if this prosecution is permitted to go forward.
In this case, the government is using Section 951 in a discriminatory manner to target a particular group that merits its displeasure. It has been widely reported that more than a dozen prominent Washington research groups, also known as think tanks, have received tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments in recent years while pushing United States government officials to adopt policies that often reflect the donors' priorities. None of these prominent DC think tanks that receive millions of dollars from foreign governments are ever prosecuted under Section 951 as unregistered foreign agents.
Yet members of the APSP, a small group of Black activists who allegedly received about $7,000 to support speaking tours, are prosecuted under Section 951 for their disfavored speech. For all these reasons, dismissal of the superseding indictment is required as to the APSP defendants.
Okay, Diane and Indigo, thank you for that read there. And I know that this is available after the motion to dismiss on the handsoffyahoo.org, and just seeing it and just having you explain it to us is just a thank you there. Thank you. And from my understanding, the government prosecutors then filed a response to the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss.
Okay, let's hear some excerpts from the government's prosecutor's response to the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss the bogus indictment, which is also available to read in full on handsoffyahoo.org's website. You got to take note of the government's definition of disinformation that they try to codify into federal case law.
And also the government's stated intent to nullify the First Amendment protections with unsubstantiated claims of national security threats.
Section 951 does not violate the First Amendment because, to the extent that it incidentally affects speech, it is a content-neutral statute that is narrowly drawn to serve a substantial national security interest. In this context, the term disinformation does not refer to information that is necessarily false. Rather, it refers to Russian intelligence's long-standing employment of influence operations utilized by the Russian government to, among other things, seek to create wedges that reduce trust and confidence in democratic processes, degrade democratization efforts, weaken U.S. partnerships with European allies, undermine Western sanctions, encourage anti-U.S. and anti-Western political views, and counter efforts to bring Ukraine and other former Soviet states into European and international institutions. In 2015, Ayanov directed Hess to draft a petition on genocide of African people in the U.S. In 2017, Neville ran for political office in St. Petersburg. Ayanov offered to assist the campaign, including through campaign finance. In 2019, the APSP's Director of Agitation and Propaganda, unindicted co-conspirator number 4, ran for local political office in St. Petersburg, Florida. Ayanov reported on this campaign to the FSB, telling them that he had donated $450 to the campaign and participated in other fundraising events. And he provided statistics to them concerning the campaign's successes.
Hey, spoiler alert. During the Uhuru 3 trial, the FBI's star witness and lead investigator, Kelly Bowen, admitted on the stand under oath that there was no evidence of any Russian interference in the local electoral campaign of Jesse Neville or that of the so-called unindicted co-conspirator number 4.
Yeah, but the government keeps pushing these lies that the Uhuru 3 had conspired with the Russian Federation to facilitate electoral interference. So the government's response to opposing the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss continues on.
Section 951 makes it a crime for an individual other than an officially recognized diplomatic or consular officer to act in the United States as an agent of a foreign government without prior notification to the Attorney General. The statute defines an agent of a foreign government as an individual who agrees to operate within the United States, subject to the direction or control of a foreign government or official.
Listen to this next part. It sounds like we're back in the Red Scare days.
As the Supreme Court has recognized in the context of a statute requiring organizations controlled by the, quote, world communist movement, unquote, to register with the Attorney General. These types of national security interests lie at the heart of American sovereignty. Means for effective resistance against foreign incursion, whether in the form of organizations which function in some technical sense as agents of a foreign power, or in the form of organizations which, by complete dedication and obedience to foreign directives, make themselves the instruments of a foreign power, may not be denied to the national legislature. In rejecting a First Amendment challenge to an onerous registration requirement for organizations controlled by the, quote, world communist movement, unquote, the court explained, where the mask of anonymity serves the double purpose of protecting a group from popular prejudice and of enabling them to cover over a foreign dictated conspiracy, infiltrate into other groups, and enlist the support of persons who would not, if the truth were revealed, lend their support. It would be a distortion of the First Amendment to hold that it prohibits Congress from removing this mask.
And that was another recurring theme in the government's whole case, the accusation that the Uhuru 3 tried to hide its communications and cooperation with the Russian non-governmental organization.
Evidence presented by the government and the Uhuru 3's attorneys was almost all drawn from public sources such as YouTube broadcasts, newspaper publications, where the Uhuru 3's movement's interaction with Ayanov and the anti-globalization movement of Russia were on full public display. So the government goes on.
Even if the court were to conclude that the governmental interests justifying the charges in the indictment relate to the defendant's free expression, the indictment would nevertheless be proper because the governmental interests at stake are so substantial as to justify infringement on constitutional rights. It is obvious and unarguable that no governmental interest is more compelling than the security of the nation. The defendant's actions strike at the heart of American national security interests, facilitating the efforts of a hostile foreign intelligence service to manipulate debates, elections, and policy in this country. In view of the foregoing, the United States respectfully requests that the court deny the defendant's motion to dismiss.
Y'all heard it. Even if the charges infringe on free expression, the government's interest should justify infringement on constitutional rights. Wow.
Yep. So let's take another short break and go to editing manager of the Bering Spear newspaper, Soliana.
Uhuru, thank you, Talmadge. So I'm going to let you know where we are towards meeting our goal during this program to get 20 new distributors of the Burning Spear newspaper. The publication of the government is spending millions of dollars to shut down. But first, we have a special offer for our viewers today. The current issue of the Burning Spear is a special issue entirely dedicated to reporting on the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial of the century. I'm going to try to move around so you guys can see. Hopefully that's visible. We are selling individual copies of this special collectible issue of the Burning Spear for $20. You can go now and order your collectible copy of this very special issue of the Burning Spear at theburningspear.store, and we'll ship it right to you. Our chat moderators are pasting the direct link into the chat for you, so you can go ahead and visit that link to order your very own spear. So now let's take a quick look at the contents of this special issue. So the report on the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial begins on page 3. We get our first peek at a series of sketches and cartoons drawn by Burning Spear Media volunteer artists as they themselves sat in court. So shout out Ruby and shout out Comrade Hallie. We also have page 4, which includes a couple of very short excerpts from the cross-examination of 2 key government witnesses, which you'll hear more of in episode 2 of this reenactment. So definitely stay tuned. Next up, we have page 5, which includes screenshots from videos that were actually shown in court, along with barcodes to take you to public videos posted online, so you can watch them for yourself. So we have those right here. Moving on, our inside color spread includes more courtroom sketches along with photos from the pretrial Freedom Summer outdoor rally at the Uhuru House in St. Pete, the press conference, and some group photos of supporters outside the Tampa Federal Courthouse. So we have a very beautiful inside page here. Now, when you place your order, or actually, I'm not even done. So on pages 14 and 15, as you can see right here, you can read comments from some of the most notable activists and journalists that express direct support for the Uhuru 3. So we have activists like, Cornel West, Zaki Baruti, we have Marsha Adebayo, we have Mumia Abu Jamal, Jill Stein, just many, many organizers across the United States showing support for the Uhuru 3. So when you place your order, you're not only obtaining this special, collectible historical copy of the Burning Spear, you're supporting the right of African people to free speech, to our own agency, to be able to express our own views rooted in our own lived experiences, to tell our own Black stories and our own Black voices. So while you're doing that, I want to again salute comrades Becky and Indigo, who have each let us know that they will be ordering bundles of the Burning Spear newspaper to distribute in their communities in Ohio and Wisconsin. So shout out Midwest. I urge everyone to join them and become a Spear subscriber now at theburningspear.store. So please keep the orders coming in for bundles of Spears. And from those of you who had missed out on the October-November special issue, for your order of this very important collectible Burning Spear. So back to you, Talmadge and Mariah. Uhuru.
Thank you, Soliano. Oh, wow, what a great set of information. So we just heard excerpts from the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss the government's prosecution response.
Yeah, and it would be a year before Judge Young issued his decision to deny the Uhuru 3's motion to dismiss. The court also denied the Uhuru Three's motion to gain access to the grand jury's transcripts, which are routinely provided to the defense in a criminal trial. The Uhuru Three's attorneys believe that a review of these transcripts would reveal disinformation presented by the government to the grand jury in order to obtain an unfounded indictment.
Meanwhile, the government tried to do an easy conviction the way they normally do, through a plea deal. The DOJ has a 99% conviction rate, usually obtained through intimidating their targets into taking a plea deal.
And the Uhuru Three refused to take a plea, which would require them to perjure themselves by admitting to something they didn't do, and also to betray the fundamental principle of African self-determination. They decided to fight back and built an anti-colonial free speech movement with over 100 endorsing organizations across the political spectrum, US-wide speaking engagements, and public support rallies on 3 continents.
The government offered a $10 million reward to anyone with information to bolster their bogus case. They approached local politicians, political opponents of the Uhuru movement in St. Petersburg and in St. Louis, along with ex-members of the Uhuru movement, in hopes of finding a disgruntled witness willing to testify against the Uhuru Three.
A fourth defendant in the trial, himself a former Uhuru member who had been expelled from the organization, was offered a plea deal if he would testify against the Uhuru Three. He refused. In a pro forma motion filed by that fourth defendant, while acting as his own lawyer, he stated that he was beaten and tortured in jail by the government in an attempt to coerce him to testify against the Uhuru Three. All these government efforts failed, and the case went to trial.
So on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, the anti-colonial free speech trial of the century began. We saw respected leaders from around the U.S. representing a broad coalition throughout the spectrum coming into Tampa for the trial. They made statements in support of the movement at the press conference held across the street from the Tampa Federal Courthouse. Supporters filed into the overflow courtroom to observe the selection of the jury.
And because there was 80 potential jurors seated in the courtroom, only the Uhuru Three, their attorneys, and a few family members were allowed into the proceeding. Juror candidates came from 6 or 7 counties spread across Florida Federal Court Middle District.
We won't be publicizing the names or the details about the individual jurors because District Judge Jung sealed the information, but we can report that the jury selection began with introductions, each potential juror stating their name, city of residence, level of education, employment, marital status, children, employment, family members, and past military service or military or jury service. Judge Jung asked a series of questions purportedly to reveal the prejudices that might affect the jury's impartiality, assessment of testimony or evidence in the case.
And one question he asked was if anyone had ever been engaged in social protest. One said they had protested the war in Vietnam. Another said they had protested Israeli genocide. And both of these were dismissed from serving as jurors in the Uhuru Three's case. Finally, 12 jurors and 6 alternates were selected. And they were seated in the jury box, and Judge Jung gave them his initial instructions.
We have to give you, the audience, a disclaimer at this point. And episode 2 and 3, when our actors reenact what happened in court, they'll be reading from excerpts from actual transcripts provided by the court. The next exchange we want to share with you is unavailable as the court transcripts. So we have reconstituted in the best of our ability from notes and memories of the Burning Spears Media's court reports. After making repeated requests to the courts for the transcript from day 1, September 3rd, we were only yesterday on November 20th, received a transcript, and it does not include Judge Jung's instruction to the jury.
But since these instructions are very important in setting the understandings and expectations for the jury, we have done our best to reconstruct the following, beginning with Judge Jung's initial instructions once the jury was seated.
Jurors, this is an important service for you to do for your country. We want to keep this country how it is and not how it turns into somewhere where we don't want to be. There are 3 rules for criminal cases. All of us are innocent unless and until the government proves its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof is on the prosecutors. Burden of proof is significant. It must be beyond a reasonable doubt, more so in a criminal case than in a civil case. They must meet every element. There is no duty on the part of a defendant to defend oneself. The defense does not have to take the stand, and that must not be taken to reflect on them in any way. This case involves the African People's Socialist Party based in St. Petersburg, referred to as the Uhuru Group. The defendants face 2 charges: conspiracy to act among the people as agents of the Russian government or officials, knowingly acting as agents at the control or behest of foreign government or officials. This case is not about espionage. It's about acting at the behest, control, or suggestion of a foreign government or individuals, and one must inform the Attorney General.
Now listen, even if you read the law, and even if you read the prosecution's own indictment, the language is clear. The 951 statute defines an agent of a foreign government as, quote, an individual who agrees to operate within the United States subject to the direction or control of a foreign government or official, end quote. Not at the behest or suggestion of a foreign individual. This is a significant difference. Once the jury left the courtroom, Uhuru 3 attorney Mataki Akbar asked the judge to set the record straight and to instruct the jury with the accurate language of the law.
Judge June, can we clarify that it's not foreign government or individuals, it is foreign government officials?
Okay, I'll look into that.
And that is not simply at the request or suggestion or even at the behest of, is under the direction or control of a foreign government.
Noted. So it's not at the behest of. Okay.
Right.
In our next episode, we'll begin with opening arguments and then hear from the government's witnesses. And before we close our program, we want to hear from the managing editor of the Burning Spear newspaper, Soliana Bakel, once more.
Uhuru, thank you, Mariah. So, like I said earlier, we set our goal to get 20 new distributors of the Burning Spear newspaper. So far, we have only seen 2 new distributors. Comrades, we have to do better. I call on you to please organize your friends, pull your money, order your spears, and get them out into the world. We have also sold 1 individual copy of the special October-November issue, which is now a collectible featuring an illustrated report from the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial of the century. And this was sold to Uhuru 3 member Penny Hess. I actually suspect that, the African People's Solidarity Committee chairwoman, Penny Hess, has already a copy of this and is showing her support for Burning Spear Media. So you can do that too. You can be like Penny. So go now to the Burning Spear.store and show your support. It's okay if you already have a copy. It's good to have an extra one. So I want to thank everyone who is supporting the newspaper that the government wants to silence. Once again, it's going to go ahead and show you what this looks like. Oh, this Zoom is not cooperating. But it's a beautiful cover, like I showed you guys earlier. There we go. It reads, "Not guilty of foreign agent charge. Uhuru works for Black people, not Russia." So this is very powerful, beautiful spear. I want to again thank everyone who's supporting this newspaper that the government wants to silence. And so please share and continue to grow the reach of this. Again, the oldest African liberation journal and continuous publication since the Black Power movement of the 1960s. When you own a spear, you own a piece of African history. So back to you, Mariah. Uhuru.
Thank you, Soliana. And yes, you own the spear, you own a piece of African history. And come on, y'all, give your support. Go now to that Burning Spear store and show your support. Order your bundles. Now, this concludes the first installment of Burning Spear Media's reenactment of the Uhuru 3's anti-colonial free speech trial of the century. In episode 2, we'll hear excerpts from the opening arguments in the case, and we will hear the government's presentation of evidence and witnesses, including the Uhuru 3's attorney's cross-examination. And then, in the third and final episode, we'll hear closing arguments, delivery of the verdict, and Chairman Amali's response to the verdict. Spoiler alert, the Uhuru 3 were found not guilty of acting as agents of the Russian government. In a contradictory and unjust verdict, they were found guilty of conspiring to act as an agent of the Russian government. They will return to the Tampa Federal Courthouse on December 16th for their sentencing hearing. The government plans to lock up 83-year-old Chairman Amali, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville for 5 years and to fine them $250,000. We say not 1 day in prison. All freedom-loving people are encouraged to attend the sentencing hearing to show your support for the Uhuru 3. You can be part of history. Come on, learn more at www.handsoffuhuru.org.
Please share the link. Subscribe to the Burning Seal TV channel on YouTube and spread the word. Uhuru, it means freedom.
Uhuru. Uhuru, and I'm Mariah, and welcome to the Uhuru 3 Sentencing Live broadcast. If you're just joining us, we just finished up watching episode 1 of the Uhuru 3 trial reenactment. In that episode, we share the background of the case and the indictment where the government set a precedent using a foreign agent statute to criminalize pure political speech. So in that episode, we did see featured excerpts from the attorneys, opening arguments, and excerpts from the indictments and pretrial motions. We looked at the jury selections and the judge's initial instructions to the jury. In episode 2, you will see the Uhuru 3 attorneys exposing the U.S. government's conspiracy to spread disinformation about the Uhuru movement, even forcing the state's lead witness to admit under oath that they had no evidence whatsoever of Russian interference in Uhuru candidates' electoral campaigns as alleged in the Department of Justice press statements and indictment. Let's watch episode 2 of the Uhuru 3 trial reenactment. Uhuru, my name is Mariah, and welcome to part 2 of Burning Spear Media's reenactment of the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial of the century. Before we begin the reenactment, I want to let you know that the Uhuru 3 were found not guilty of acting as agents of the Russian government. In a contradictory and unjust verdict, they were found guilty of conspiring to act as agents of the Russian government. They will return to the Tampa Federal Courthouse on December 16th for their sentencing hearing. The government wants to lock up 83-year-old Chairman Amali, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville for 5 years and to fine them $250,000 each. Freedom-loving people say not one day in prison. Everyone is encouraged to attend the sentencing hearing on December 16th to show your support for the Uhuru 3. Learn more at www.handsoffyahoo.org. In episode 1, we reminded you that on July 29, 2022, the FBI conducted violent military pre-dawn raids on 7 homes and offices of the Uhuru Black Freedom Movement, including that of its founder and leader, Chairman Amalia Shatella. Employing tanks, drones, flashbang grenades, and battering rams, black-jacketed soldiers trained laser-guided automatic weapons on the bodies of then 81-year-old Chairman Amali and his wife, Onazine Shatella, as they emerged from their front door in the impoverished Black community of North St. Louis. No arrests were made at that time, but $40,000 in damage was done to the 7 properties, and the FBI seized all of the occupants' computers, phones, hard drives, and boxes of files. 9 months later, on April 18, 2023, the Uhuru 3 chairman, Amalia Shatella, and 2 leaders of the Uhuru movement's white solidarity and reparations component, Penny Hess and Jesse Neville, were indicted on 2 baseless charges of acting as unregistered agents of the Russian government and of conspiring to act as unregistered agents of the Russian government. They reported for arraignment in May of 2023, and they were put into leg irons, retained in holding cells, had their passports taken, and then were released on bond. They are now required to report weekly to pretrial monitoring officers and to get permission from the government before traveling across state lines. In September of 2024, the week-long trial of the Uhuru 3 was held in Tampa Federal Court. The court was packed with supporters from around the U.S. and across the whole political spectrum. Burning Spear Media is proud to present a 3-part reenactment of the historic Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial of the century, where the government's conspiracy to gut the First Amendment was exposed. In episode 1, we learned about the background of the case, with excerpts from the indictment and the pretrial motions, and then saw the beginning of the trial with jury selection and the judge's initial instructions to the jury. Today, in episode 2, we'll take you inside the courtroom for the opening arguments and the testimony of key government witnesses that reveals the government's conspiracy to mislead the jury and spread misinformation to the public about the Department of Justice's blatant attack on the First Amendment. The government began their courtroom attack with their opening argument, of which we present excerpts from the court transcript.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Menno Goodman. Together with my colleagues Daniel Marcet and Risha Asokan, we represent the United States. The evidence in this case will show that the defendants acted at the direction of the Russian government. The defendants drafted, published, and submitted a petition to the United Nations accusing the United States of committing genocide against African Americans. The defendants carried out a multi-city, multi-day protest envisioned and funded by the Russians. The defendants published articles on topics and on terms dictated by the Russians. The defendants provided information to the Russians on ongoing political campaigns, including one where defendant Jesse Neville was the candidate. The defendants used their public platforms, their radio station, their website, their newspaper to support Russia in, quote, its information war, end quote, against the United States. For these actions, the defendants are charged with 2 counts. That's 2 separate federal crimes. First, all 4 defendants are charged with conspiring to act as foreign agents of the Russian government. This is a conspiracy charge. For now, just think of the conspiracy as an argument to commit as an agreement to commit a crime. The second charge, defendants Yeshatella, Hess, and Neville are charged with actually acting right here as agents of the Russian government.
Next, the jurors heard from Uhuru 3 attorney Addie Griffin. Here are the excerpts from her opening argument as recorded in the court transcripts. Let's check that out.
Amalia Shatella is innocent. Penny Hess is innocent. And Jesse Neville is innocent. This is a case about censorship. The evidence will show that this case is a direct attack by the US government in an attempt to censor the political views and beliefs of the African People's Socialist Party, Amalia Shatella, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville. Amalia Shatella was born on October 9th, 1941 in St. Petersburg, Florida, and has been an activist his entire life. He is the author of over 15 books and numerous pamphlets. In the 1960s, Amalia Shatella joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, during the Civil Rights Movement. The evidence will show that in 1968, he created the Burning Spear newspaper. The evidence will show that the Burning Spear has published articles that protested every single war the United States has ever been in during Amalia's lifetime. From its first issue in 1969, the Burning Spear addressed critical issues, including the genocide of Black people. The Burning Spear newspaper has traditionally offered information, facts, and opinions to the people of the United States and around the world that are oftentimes not found in mainstream media. The Burning Spear newspaper also provides a medium for citizens of our country, along with people from other countries, to publish articles discussing their views on important events here and around the globe. In 1972, Amalia formed the APSP to lead the struggle of African working class people and others oppressed by US capitalism and colonialism. The party has consistently advocated for peace, dignity, and self-determination for Black and African people globally. Amalia Shatella has dedicated his life to the liberation of African people with the guidance and help of the members of the APSP. In 1976, the APSP created the African People's Solidarity Committee, APSC, a predominantly white branch led by Penny Hess for 47 years. APSC advocates for reparations to Black people worldwide. The evidence will show that the crime of genocide and the reparations due has been the primary focus and life work of Chairperson Penny Hess. In fact, in 2001, well before any of the Russians mentioned by the government, Penny Hess published a book on the history of genocide titled Overturning the Culture of Violence. The APSP popularized the term reparations, organizing over 12 tribunals on the subject since 1982 and leveraging international law to press their case. So it should come as no surprise that in 2015, Penny Hess spearheaded a petition to the United Nations charging the US government with genocide. The APSP has built tangible opportunities within African communities such as farmers markets, basketball courts, community kitchens, health centers, housing opportunities, resume and skill training programs, just to name a few. Amalia Shatella has championed reparations on the global stage, traveling to countries including South Africa, Liberia, and Russia. Again, it should come as absolutely no surprise that you will learn that Amalia Shatella formed a partnership with a man named Alexander Ionov, the leader of the anti-globalization movement of Russia, a non-governmental organization. The evidence will show that the anti-globalization movement of Russia, which was led by Alexander Ionov, promoted similar ideologies in line with the African People's Socialist Party. The government alleges the APSP acted under Russian direction, accusing them of promoting their political views at the behest of a foreign entity. However, the evidence will show that the APSP's political objectives have been consistent for over 50 years, rooted in African liberation and reparations. This case is not about agreeing or disagreeing with the APSP's views. It is about their constitutional right to express them. Whether or not you share their beliefs, their ability to voice them must be upheld.
Imagine this story of African liberation was presented in a U.S. federal court to a jury. Then Uhuru 3 attorney Leonard Goodman presented his opening argument. And here are excerpts from his opening argument as recorded in the court transcripts.
Picture in your head an agent of a foreign government. You probably will picture a person motivated by greed, willing to sell out their country to obtain sensitive information and transfer it to some foreign government in order to harm the United States. And then let me tell you about Penny Hess. Penny is 78 years old. She's from Louisville, Kentucky, where she grew up in the 50s and 60s. In 1976, she heard Chairman Omali Yeshitela speak about the history of African people, colonization and enslavement, and the fight for liberation. She was not political at the time, but she was moved by what she heard. She said, "I want to help. This is what I want to do with my life." And she spent the next nearly 50 years working for the African People's Socialist Party. For much of that time, they didn't have the money to pay her, and she worked as a volunteer while holding jobs as a waitress and a temp secretary. She is absolutely devoted to the cause. The government begins its version of events in May 2015 when the African People's Socialist Party received an invitation for Omali Yeshitela to present at a conference in Moscow. This was not unusual for the party. Omali Yeshitela has participated in conferences in close to 20 foreign countries, including Africa, Northern Ireland, Spain, England, and Jamaica. The Moscow conference brought together activists and groups against war and colonialism. It was hosted by the Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia, the AGMR, which is a non-governmental organization. The African People's Socialist Party is also a not-for-profit group. It is not a wealthy organization and relies entirely on supporters. As Penny mentioned, they do community work, lifting people up in poor and Black communities in St. Petersburg, Florida, St. Louis, and other US cities where they have a presence. The evidence will show that the African People's Socialist Party and Penny Hess have held the same principles and beliefs for 50 years. These principles did not change after Omali Yeshitela visited Moscow in May 2015. The government's theory is puzzling because there is no dispute that their views on these issues have been consistent for decades. Yet the government suggests that even though this group has been saying the same thing for 50 years, after May 2015, they were saying it for Russia. You will hear about money raised. The evidence will show that as a not-for-profit, it is legal to raise money, including from foreigners. The government knows this. The real issue, as the evidence will show, is that these defendants hold views that sometimes align with Russia during a time when the US government tells us to hate and fear Russia. The African People's Socialist Party is critical of US foreign policy, has a large following, and owns a newspaper that communicates directly with many people, making them a perceived threat. At a second Moscow conference in 2015 called the Dialogue of Nations, the African People's Socialist Party was invited to present. The AGMR had one condition: some separatist groups would attend, and they wanted the party to declare support for an African American separatist state. Penny Hess sent the AGMR a response authored by Chairman Omali Yeshitela, stating that the party's position is one of unconditional solidarity with indigenous people of US and Mexico. They do not support Africans taking land stolen from indigenous peoples and Mexicans to declare a state. The party's position was clear: we don't change our views for anyone. The AGMR still wanted the chairman to attend. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Penny Hess and her colleagues hold strong principles. You will not hear any evidence that Penny Hess ever compromised her principles to become a mercenary or activist on behalf of Russia or anyone else.
You will not hear any evidence that Penny Hess ever compromised her principles, and that's right. And lastly, we hear from Uhuru 3 attorney Mataki Akbar with excerpts from his opening argument as recorded in the court transcripts.
Uhuru, you heard this word stated repeatedly throughout this trial. Uhuru is a Swahili word meaning freedom. That's how significant it is to this organization. They say it when they greet each other. The freedom to protest against the government when they disagree with it, the freedom to send petition to the United Nations when they believe genocide is being committed against the African American community, the freedom to stand with nations that our government portrays as the boogeyman. That's what this case is about. Let me tell you about Jesse Neville. He came to St. Petersburg in 2008 as a student at the University of South Florida, volunteering for voting advocacy groups and registering people to vote. In 2010, he heard Omali Yeshitela and Penny Hess speak on campus. Their message about white people being allies to the Black community resonated with him. He began working with the organization and by 2014 became chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. In 2014, the relevance of the African People's Socialist Party, APSP, was peaking. Eric Gardner was killed by law enforcement in July and Michael Brown in August. People around the world were reaching out to organizations like APSP asking, how could we help spread the message about what was happening in America? Among the countries reaching out was Russia. Alexander Ionov, a Russian national, said he wanted to help. In December 2014, he wrote an article in the Burning Spear. By May 2015, amid rising protests, Ionov invited someone from APSP to speak in Russia. The chairman went and spoke openly. Evidence shows he appeared on news channels, the Burning Spear and YouTube, saying, I just got back from Russia, and here's what I told them, and here's how they will help us continue this movement. This began the relationship. In September 2015, the chairman returned to Russia, spreading the same message. Meanwhile, police killings in the United States continue. At Ionov's suggestion, APSP created a petition for submission to the United Nations. They drafted it in their own words, outlining their demands. After gathering thousands of signatures, they sought to bring further attention to it. APSP decided to organize encampment tours around 6 cities coinciding with the United Nations tour. They visited Chicago, New York, DC, Jackson, and more, broadcasting their efforts transparently on Facebook. Ionov, through his organization, AGMR, pledged to fund the tour. APSP provided a $12,000 budget for expenses. In the middle of the tour, Penny Hess followed up on the funding. Ionov's secretary requested videos and reports of attendance. Omali Yeshitela responded via email, I quote, I want to make it very clear that we are not your employees. We are your allies, and we need you to act accordingly, end quote. The evidence will show this was an alliance, not subservience. After the tour, Ionov sporadically pledged small amounts to the ASP programs, $500 here, $1,000 there. Just like other donors, all transactions were public. In 2022, when the war began, APSP had long maintained that Russia was right. They held a workshop to establish their position on the Russia-Ukraine war before any discussion with Ionov. Ultimately, the case involves a group in the U.S. exercising its freedom of speech and a foreign nation aligning with some of its views. The government portrays Russia as the boogeyman, someone we shouldn't talk to or agree with. But aligning views does not make it criminal. That's why we're here.
Thank you, Attorney Akbar. And that is exactly why we're here. So those were excerpts from the opening arguments delivered by the government's prosecutors and the Uhuru 3 attorneys. When we return from a short break, we'll hear trial transcripts, excerpts from the examination and cross-examination of the government's witnesses.
Uhuru, my name is Soliana Bakel, and I'm the managing editor of the Burning Spear newspaper, and I hope you're enjoying this program as much as I am. I, of course, want to salute our chairman, Amalia Shatella, who is the founder of the Burning Spear, and who today faces 5 years in prison for speaking out on behalf of the African nation. And we, of course, want to salute Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella, whose tireless work as architect of the Black Power Blueprint is turning the chairman's vision for African self-determination into reality. If you've been following the news of the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial of the century, your best source of information has been the Burning Spear newspaper, the burningspear.com website, and the Burning Spear TV channel on YouTube. But Burning Spear Media doesn't only publish a monthly newspaper and broadcast programs online. We also publish books, pamphlets, posters, and other merchandise to spread out and
Quick test. Uhuru, Lisa, can you hear me?
Talk about free speech so much on this one. He talked about there's no need to prove that register thing.
Uhuru, Lisa, can you hear me? Yes. Wait.
10:30. I'm like, this went pretty quick.
It is unmuted.
Yeah.
Can you hear?
I think he had already pretty much made determination.
Oh, right.
In fact, indicated what he was going to do before the defense
Okay,
had
yeah.
to do a whole presentation.
Uhuru.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, hey, mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you.
All right, we've got word, y'all, that the verdict is in, and we're now going to our live feed in Tampa for some breaking news following the first sentencing hearing. All right, we've got word, y'all, that the verdict is in, and we're now going to our live feed in Tampa for some breaking news following the first sentencing hearing. Any moment now, y'all, any moment they will be coming out and letting us know. We are expecting word, any update momentarily right now, live from Tampa at the courthouse. We are expecting word right now, any moment. Again, we're still waiting. Any moment now, live from the Tampa courthouse, we will get a word of the sentencing. This is what we've been waiting for. The sentencing, the verdict is in. So we're just waiting for our comrades to come out and let us know at the Tampa courthouse live any moment now. All right, y'all. Again, we're waiting for a word live from the Tampa courthouse. The sentencing verdict, it is in. We both know we all know it's been a long journey here. And the Uhuru 3, that sentencing verdict is in. From that moment of kicking in those doors, of seizing all the equipment, breaking into all the Uhuru 3s, just all of that has come down to this moment. We've gone through the trial. We've watched the reenactments. We've listened to the testimonies, the lives from that Department of Justice, and we're here now. And like we said, at any moment, this is what we're waiting for. We want him not one day in prison. We know the sentencing of Chairman Amalia Shatella, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville there. At any moment now, we will get the first sentencing verdict. We're just waiting here from the Tampa courthouse. Stay tuned. Okay, guys, we're waiting live from the Tampa courthouse. We're waiting for that sentencing verdict, and we know the case, the Uhuru 3. We're all here for it to see what is that verdict. Is the judge going to do right? The FBI, they lied. We saw there was no evidence. We saw the lies that they put on trial there, and what will that verdict be? That's what we're here for. Any moment. We're waiting any moment now. Stay tuned. Now, again, if you're just joining us, thank you for joining Burning Spear Media. I'm Mariah, and here we are. We're waiting. We're waiting for the sentencing verdict of the Uhuru 3 coming now from the Tampa courthouse. As we await, we know that the Judge William Jung is in this federal court in Tampa, and the government, it just wants to put the Uhuru 3 in prison for 5 years and fine them that $250,000. They said it had that conspiracy conviction, and it's just entirely trying to exercise their First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. That's something that we all have, and we want to we're waiting here to see, all out for that sentencing, waiting to see what you want to free the Uhuru 3 and not 1 day in prison. So as we said, let's just see live from that Tampa courthouse, what is that sentencing verdict any moment now.
Are you ready to see your brand on TV? Your competitors will wish they had known about Vi.
Now again, thank you for joining Burning Spear Media as we await live the sentencing verdict from the Tampa courthouse of the Uhuru 3. Uhuru, as we know, Uhuru, it means freedom in Swahili. And the Uhuru 3 are Amala Yeshitela, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Penny Hess, chair of the African Solidarity Committee. Here we go. Here we go. Here they come.
Not one day.
outside the Tampa courthouse as we await that sentencing verdict, y'all. Uhuru 3, we have a sentencing verdict. All right, y'all, from July 29th, 2022, that FBI raid to today, what is that sentencing verdict?
Uhuru.
Uhuru. I see Attorney Mataki Akbar. Look at the solidarity, guys. Look at the Uhuru 3 solidarity here. Look at the support. Live from that Tampa courthouse. Let's see what they have to say.
Okay. Uhuru, everyone. My name is Jaina Belamumba. I'm the Southern Regional Representative for the African People's Socialist Party, as well as the granddaughter of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And I'm happy to report that in the case of the Uhuru 3, that Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chair Jesse Neville, and Chairwoman Penny Hess have not been sentenced to 1 day in prison. In addition, they will not pay a single dollar for a fine. They have also been granted the ability to travel freely. And they have been issued 300 hours of community service, which we already do, as well as 36 months of probation. So we are, as we wait for them to be released from the probation office, we are happy to say that from day one, the FBI conducted violent multi-city military raids on 7 Uhuru movement homes and offices. We've waged a campaign that put the state on trial and united forces across the political spectrum in defense of free speech and the rights of the African community to self-determination. When they indicted us, they expected us to fold. They expected us to run or to take a plea, which is mainly how they achieved their 99% conviction rate in federal criminal cases. We didn't fold. We didn't run. We didn't hide. We didn't take a plea to confess to something that we didn't do. We are fighting and we are winning. We have built an international, non-sectarian, broad-based, anti-colonial free speech movement. The state's objective was not only to imprison 83-year-old Chairman Omali Yeshitela. They wanted to silence us, to criminalize dissent, to force us underground, and to crush the African liberation movement. As Chairman Omali wrote in response to the September 12th verdict, the jury rejected the bogus charge that African people require leadership from Russians or groups characterized as white to define and lead our struggle to end domestic colonialism. Yeah. We salute the people's multifaceted and ubiquitous movement for anti-colonial free speech and democratic rights whose tireless and heroic organizing contributed profoundly towards this massive victory. The U.S. government did not intend to lose their case on the charge that the Uhuru movement was working for the Russians. Their political goal was to use the foreign agent charge to deny the legitimacy of the Black liberation movement when we criticized the U.S. government for its treatment of African people. Their charge that we are foreign agents was meant to mute the significance of our criticisms of the killings of Black men and women by the police, the mass incarcerations of our people, the gentrification and other forms of colonial terror on our communities, by saying that it was actually the Russians who told us to say it. The U.S. government expended a tremendous amount of resources, at least tens of millions of dollars, and hundreds of FBI agents and other government personnel to carry out this sham trial. They stole from our properties at least 13 terabytes of data, the equivalent of 2.5 million books worth of information. They put 14 witnesses on the stand to present their so-called evidence, all of them FBI agents, except for 2 academic hacks who admitted they knew nothing about our case. Under cross-examination, one FBI agent after another was forced to admit that there was no evidence that we ever agreed to work under the direction or control of Russia. That's right. The lead investigator from the FBI even had to admit under oath that the FBI and the DOJ knowingly lied to the people when they indicted us for, quote, election interference, unquote, despite the fact that not a shred of evidence of anything was of the sort was ever identified. The jury saw right through it and was able to declare that the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela have never worked for the Russians. We have always worked for Black people. This was a political trial. The colonial state's failed efforts to convince a jury that we are foreign agents was part of a larger political goal to forever discredit speech by Black people and other colonized people against our oppression at the hands of the U.S. government. The U.S. government told the jury that when we demanded reparations to our people, it was the Russians who told us to do that. The jury said no. They told the jury, Uhuru, here's the chairman.
Here we go. Here we go.
Here he is right here. Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the federal court.
How's that? Yeah, we're gonna talk about these incredible lawyers. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, one of them said, not one day, not one dime. Not one day, not one dime. So, not yet Uhuru. Not yet Uhuru. Not yet Uhuru. I just would like to express our appreciation to all of you for being here all along with us and giving these incredible lawyers this foundation to stand on, right? And they're able to walk into the lion's den with great confidence and just did a splendid job. And if you listen to what the judge had to say, he said what our lawyers have been saying all along. That was the thing that I was so impressed by. Our lawyers, the lawyers have been saying this all along. And our lawyers have said that we shouldn't be here. We had a lawyer who said that if this thing even goes to trial, that it's an assault, a major assault on the First Amendment. And so I just wanted to acknowledge everybody here and the power of the people. The power of the people. I want to say that the only reason this discussion is happening right now about free speech, and the judge was given an opportunity to make the rulings and make the statements that he made, the only reason he was given this opportunity is because we fought. If we had laid down, we wouldn't have had this discussion. And the discussion we've had up to now, I'm sure, is going to play a role in our appeal. And this has just been a splendid journey that we've been on just in terms of the time here. These are incredible lawyers. And I think we've opened up an entirely new era in terms of political lawyers. I haven't seen anything like this since the 1960s. Yeah. And how's that? Addie. Addie. Addie, yes. Addie said. Addie said, I object. I object. I object. I don't know if she knew any other words. I wanted to be on the record. I object, I object, I object. That was splendid, right? And then we had the remarkable Angela, who was back in the background most of the time. We didn't see it, but we knew she was there just based on the work she was doing. The work she was doing with Leonard Goodman. Leonard, as far as I was concerned, drew first blood. Somebody. Yeah. When he came out with the motion to drop the charges, to get rid of the charges, and he did this remarkable piece that used our 14-point program, used who we were, the history of our movement as the basis for it. It was an extraordinary piece. And then there's the Uhuru man. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if everybody, well, many of you won't know who Naeem Akbar is. Okay. Yeah, that's his daddy. And I'm sure his daddy is quite pleased with him, for this incredible job that he's done. That's right. We go into a courtroom and we have these lawyers who go up and their opening statements and say, Uhuru. Say, can you repeat that? Uhuru. Uhuru. And then it says means freedom. It said means freedom of speech, freedom of association, etc. We have a lawyer that we don't hide from anything. We have a lawyer that says that Omali Ishitela cannot be bought. He's a revolutionary. He's a revolutionary, right? This went down in the courtroom, and I am. And this is the basis for the attack and the concrete. We made a concrete manifestation, not just a revolutionary in words, not just bullet mouthing, not just blowing smoke, but actually creating a new world right now. This is the thing that's so problematic because we don't just dislike the world we live in. We're not just talking about destroying something. Our objective is to build the new world right under their feet. Build a new world, and that's what we've been doing, etc. And this is the task that we've taken on. And Leonard, this guy likes writing these incredible briefs. Leonard, I'll write that. It's been really remarkable, and of course, all of you, we couldn't have come this far without you. And I have so much appreciation. We've got people who come from everywhere, across all kinds of political and ideological spectrums. Some people fought us because of some people who were with us. You have those people with you. We don't want to be with you. Said bye. You understand? And we crossed the political spectrum. This is not playing games and what have you. Not just talking about stuff. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of everybody who's been with us. We're on trial because we allegedly, where we're on trial, the Russians are the ones who put us in motion. Come here. 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 This is Fred Hampton Jr. The FBI killed the FBI and the Chicago Police Department killed his daddy at 4 o'clock in the morning on Western Monroe. Right there, and his mama was something like 8 months pregnant and she was in the bed with his daddy. That's right. And so the Russians, so it's incredible. Where is she? Where's Pam? Right there. Yeah, Pam Africa. Yeah. The Russians, Pam Africa. Pam Africa with the MOVE organization, that where the FBI, where the police department got a C-grade, military-grade explosion and got a helicopter and dropped it, dropped a bomb on their house, killing 11 children, men and women, and destroying an entire African community and letting it burn while it happened. The Russians have to tell me. We're not instructed by the Russians. We're instructed by our history. Our history. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. And also, Penelope. I nicknamed her. Not one day, not one time. Penny Hess. Yes, Penny Hess, my dear comrade. Yeah. How many years? 40? How many years, Penny?
Almost 50.
Almost 50 years. So we're not a fly-by-night organization. We've been serious from the very beginning. We continue to be serious. There are all kinds of people and groups here, and I'm not going to say too much more.
Jesse.
Where's Jesse? Oh. Jesse is an incredible organizer. He was 27, I think he was when I met him. He was 27. Were you 27?
I was 19, actually.
I can be at 83. I can be forgiven. Yeah, just an incredible young man, incredible organizer.
Yeah.
He has put us in 140 cities. White people working under our leadership in 140 cities in this country. And the Russians And these are white people who are talking about genocide against African people, talking about reparations for African people. Some people think they know about reparations, and they would have their gall in this building to say that the Russians put us on a reparation trajectory. We organized the first tribunal for reparations and in this country in 1983 in Brooklyn, New York. And it was based on international law, including the Genocide Convention. That's what makes it so ridiculous, right? Then we got, it's just an incredible group of forces. And I'm going to stop calling names because I'm already in trouble. Yeah. Africa will be free. Yes. That's what we're working on. That's why we also exist in, I don't know how many countries in Africa now. They call them countries. But we're in South Africa. We're in Namibia. We're in Sierra Leone. We're in Liberia. We are in Kenya. We are throughout the continent of Africa. That's who we are. And Europe. And so we don't just talk about how AFRICOM, must go. We're organizing on the ground in all of these places, and that's another problem that we have too. So, Penny, you.
Incredible victory today. I want to salute my leadership, Chairman Amalia Shatella, Chairman Shatella, and the African Revolution. That this is a victory for the reality that the party and the chairman created the white solidarity movement in part to break the isolation that the U.S. government has imposed upon the African liberation movement. That APSC was created to be a front. We are not allies. We are not support in that way. We are part of the strategy of the African People's Socialist Party to go into the white community and to win reparations, because when we tell the truth about this country in the past and now, we know that it can't be denied that the US and this system was built on the enslavement of African people. It was built on the genocide of the indigenous people.
Free Little Peltier.
Yes.
Free Little Peltier.
Yes. And this is a powerful victory. Yes, free Leonard Peltier, free the indigenous people. This is still their land. And that if white people want to join the future, we need to be under the leadership of those who have been oppressed and colonized for hundreds of years for our benefit. And this is a powerful victory. The chairman has won every victory, every fight. I am so honored to be on the side of history. We are winning. We are winning. We are winning. And salute to all of the supporters. Wow. It is so moving. This is so moving. Thank you. Our attorneys were amazing. Our comrades. Yes. Our attorneys are comrades.
Yes, indeed.
So Uhuru, Leonard, and Angela, who I had the honor in particular of working with, but it was a whole team. Addie, Utaki, Tom Inskeep. Wow.
And they all brought their own distinctive style, and it was just incredible.
And I also just want to salute really quickly my comrade Jesse Neville, who I unite, is an amazing, powerful, also the Uhuru lawyer in a lot of ways.
Jesse's going to law school. He didn't know it before this trial.
Yes. So yeah, come on, Jesse. Uhuru.
Uhuru!
Not one day.
Not one dime.
Not one dime. 28 months. 28 months and 2 weeks ago, July 29th, 2022, the U.S. government came to the homes of Chairman Amalia Shatella, Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella, Chairwoman Penny Hess, myself, my wife, Amanda, my comrade who's here, Kitty Riley, the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida, the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis. They came with hundreds of agents.
Yes.
How much money was spent that day alone carrying out that military operation against the Uhuru movement? Handcuffed Chairman Amalia Shatella and Deputy Chair at gunpoint for hours. And 9 months later, you have the indictment. You have hundreds of FBI agents working on this case. You have the National Security Division of the Justice Department coordinating the prosecution. You have an untold amount of resources and focus that the US government tried to bring down against the movement of African people for liberation, and they got their asses handed to them. And that is a testament to all of you, but above all, it is a testament to the relentless, indestructible leadership of Chairman Amalia Shatella, the African People's Socialist Party, Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella. And I consider it the greatest honor of my life up to this point to have been targeted alongside my two heroes, the leaders who have been the greatest inspiration to my life, Chairman Amalia Shatella and Chairwoman Penny Hess. So I just want to finish by saying that as Chairwoman Penny said, that this is a time now for all white people who want to take a stand to join the Uhuru Solidarity movement, because this victory proves nothing will ever silence the voice of African people, of oppressed people, colonized people struggling for their liberation, for their self-determination, and from the voice of white people saying, we stand in solidarity with Black power. We stand for reparations to African people. We stand for a free Palestine. We stand for a free indigenous people, free Leonard Peltier, free Mumia Abu Jamal, free all African, indigenous, and colonized peoples everywhere. Our voice will never be silenced. Uhuru.
A people united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated.
Charles, take this up.
We come all the way from New York City,
Yes.
the Operation Power Organization D12, to sit and hear a judge. I'm not going to give them a fine because they're just going to raise the money anyway. Well, he gave them community service, time served. They've been serving in the community. This was a powerful victory, but this is just the beginning. Now we got to take this back to New York and get justice for Neely, that coward who choked him to death and the courts let him loose. We got to take this across the country, across the world, and we won't stop until we fully liberated as a people from colonial oppression. Right on to the chairman, right on to our movement, and right on to all of our political prisoners who are still behind the walls. We say, free them all, free them all, free them all. Right ahead. Right on. And my wife, Inez. I want to say before the chairman gets me in trouble, my wife, Inez, who I've been married to for 42 years. We've been in the struggle for 110 years combined. We've been living on this planet for 152 years. So I think we know a little bit about what we're talking about here. And that's why we're with the chairman and the movement. Yeah. Yeah, sweet. Yes.
I just want to add, just taking on the federal government is challenging for anyone, but I've never seen three braver people than the Uhuru three. And I would say, especially for a man who's 83 years old, this takes a lot of stress, a lot of strength. And for a lady, my lovely client, Penny Hess. And I also want to thank Judge Young for, we've had our disagreements with him, but today he saw that that These are people that have been doing this work for 50 years. Their positions have not changed against colonialism, for Black liberation. Their positions didn't change in 2015 when the chairman took a trip to Moscow and participated in a conference. It's absurd. The judge recognized that today, and I want to thank Judge Young for that. Yes. And thank you all for your support.
Slow down, man.
All right. In the beginning of this case, I remember talking to the prosecutor, and what stands out the most is the change in his demeanor over the last couple of years. I thought he did a great job. I appreciated everything, but to see the government present a case and change their arguments and to make the statements that were made today and for the judge to see through that is very satisfying. And I just have to say that it's been an incredible journey. I appreciate all of you. I've said it a million times, but it's beyond an honor to represent the chairman. And we have won.
It's not too much to add. I just want to say, you know, like Lynn said, and like we already said, like, you know, fighting the federal government is a difficult job. And most of the time you're defeated before you even walk through the door. And they assume that you're defeated before you walk through the door. But they didn't realize who our clients were when we came through the door, and there was no option to lay down. And with it not being an option to lay down, we stood up for the last 2.5 years. We stood up against all that they bought before us, the 2 million books that they bought before us of what they considered evidence. And like you said, at the end of it, the judge saw and realized what we had been saying the whole time. That this is a group, whether you agree with them or not. You know, one of the things that we can say about this country that we live in is that you do have the freedom to say whatever it is that you want, as long as it doesn't cross over certain thresholds. And that's what we were trying to say. We're not asking anybody to agree with the movement or to agree with reparations or to agree with the petition, but agree that we have the right to say what we have that we have to say. And that's what we were speaking out against. So one of the good things I think that came out of this trial is that it identified that in 2015, 2016, around that time, that's when all the police killings were going on. And that was the time where they were being reached out to by INOF and other people throughout the world, identifying the crimes that were taking place in the United States. And because of that, that drew attention. And because of that, that showed that the African People's Socialist parties and other people like that were in the forefront to say we can't stand silent or idly while Black men are getting killed by law enforcement. And because of that, that drew attention to what they were doing. But again, it wasn't just the protest, it wasn't just the talk. It was that we're going to build up as a result of this. And building up as a result of this, we're moving into St. Louis, right down the street from where the brother was killed by law enforcement, and we're going to build that community so things like that won't happen. So this was not just a moment in history. It's a movement in history. And with it being a movement in history, one thing that we can't allow, and I think this is another lesson that we learned, is that we can't let the movement die or fall down because of 2 people or 3 people, that we have to keep the movement going. Because if we don't keep the movement going, then anything can happen. We could be trampled on in any kind of way. So we have to be sure that we take the lesson from this, is that we have to have a succession plan. We have to continue the movement. We have to continue moving up, and we have to continue building our communities in a strong way and not be fearful to do it. So Uhuru.
Thank you very much. Neville, when you talk about white guys, there ain't no more white person here today than me. I don't mean that just by the color of my skin. I mean that by the ignorance that I possess about Chairman O'Malley and his movement. One of the things that came across in meeting with the chairman and meeting with the Uhuru 3 and the wonderful people that have surrounded them is they have something to say And they have a right to say it. And I have a duty as an American to listen to it. But I can't listen to it if they shut them up. Now, we have been blessed. This is the battle of America that took place here today. And I know we think that what happened in there is a victory, but it's a defeat. Why? Because not every American has the courage of Chairman O'Malley, Penny, and Neville. Not every American has this legal team standing up behind them. This is a chilling impact on every American citizen who says, I thought I had a right to speak, but if I speak out, I'm going to spend 2.5 years standing to judgment in front of a court that never loses. And so they shut up. And they don't just shut up, they don't listen. If this is going to work, if your movement's going to work, you have to bring people like me into it so that I can listen to you, that we can share things, that we can grow, not as a Black nationalist movement, but as an American movement together to try and right the wrongs. But we can't do that if we don't communicate, and we can't communicate if we don't speak, and we're not going to speak if the government thinks that it can charge us, make us spend a whole bunch of money for 2.5 years to what? Get a probation sentence. Is this what the government did? This wasn't about you, Chairman. This is about me. This is about everybody in the city of Tampa, everybody in America, because it can happen across, well, I'm talking about Americans in first speech, but across the world too. But the point is, what they did here is an assault on every American. I don't know why the people driving, the people at home, you should be here too. This is your fight. They fought your fight, and the fight's not over, Chairman. I'm going to commit myself to working with you, going to St. Louis and learning about you. I encourage all other Americans to do the same thing.
I just wanted to say before I met this guy in person, I was reading about him and said, who is this guy? I sound like Pam now. Because he was a weapons inspector. And when the U.S. was claiming there were these weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they used, what's the Negro's name? Colin Powell as their mouthpiece to make that point. And I kept reading about this guy who was saying, there are no weapons of mass destruction. We haven't seen any weapons of mass destruction. And that was, his name was Scott Ritter. I remembered that name because it was such an outstanding stance that he took. And that was, and he and they, the people who were writing about him were incensed that he disagreed about the presence of weapons of mass destruction. And that's part of what we talk about in terms of freedom of speech. I mean, I was able to get that information, that stance that he took. And so before even meeting him, I appreciated him. And so he's here now. And as he says, he is a patriot, a bona fide white guy, and all of this. And we forgive him. Yeah. And so I just wanted to, Angela, what bist du? Angela, not one day, not one time.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone. Just following off of what Mr. Ritter said, I think this case has there's been a great opportunity for people to be drawn together. When I saw Chairman Omali Yeshitela speaking with Tucker Carlson, I thought for a minute, what world are we in? But no, I realized the government's given us a wonderful opportunity. Yes. So, you know, and again, going up a federal case is never an easy task, but I usually don't have clients that give me so much to work with. So I just want to, you know, I appreciate these people. It's amazing their commitment to this work. Unfortunately, I decided to shut up before I got to tell you how wonderful Penny Hess was today. So, but I thought I should stop while I was ahead. So I'm definitely happy with this outcome. And I thank everybody and all the support that we've had along the way. Right. And I can't express my appreciation for Mutaki and Addie and Lynn enough. They've been a great team to work with. Yeah. Thank you.
From the Lou. Zaki Baruti.
Yes. As mentioned by
chairman. I'm from St. Louis, and I got opportunity to meet the chairman at the height of the Ferguson uprising.
Yeah.
And his brilliant leadership in terms of, first of all, remembering calling for a black grand jury as relates to the killer cop named Darren Wilson.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, murder is ongoing, right?
Yeah.
So we still got to arrest Darren Wilson, the killer cop of Michael Brown Jr. But also, I just want to remind the chairman that upon him being charged, I whispered into his ear because he was 80 years old. Damn, you need to be like Assata Shakur. Get the hell on out of here. You know, to a free socialist country. However, he stood resolute, along with Penny and Jesse. And I have to compliment them because as white people, you know, it's easy to cave in and go state evidence, but they have stood resolute.
Yeah.
So, and my last comment, reflecting on what Scott was saying, this is for me bittersweet because it's a damn shame that this government has spent millions of dollars when you got people homeless out here. It's a damn shame. And so this government, they need to be investigated. The FBI, who issued the order to charge them, they need to be up in the court rather than the Uhuru 3. So last but not least, their victory is a reflection of a people united will never be defeated.
Right.
So our task ahead is continual organization, so that our people can be liberated, not only in this country, but throughout the world. Stay strong. Comrade Afia Mwangaza from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
That's right. Black power. All power to the people. We have consistently claimed the victory throughout this struggle. And the important point that this trial represents is the closing of the gap between the defeat of the human rights struggle of the 60s and the attempt and the struggle to revive it today. So today it has been revived. Today we understand not only do we have the ability and the right, but we have the duty to stand up.
Yes.
And that these lawyers have revived the militant tradition of lawyering for the people, not as leaders, but as technicians in service to the people. We applaud you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of the Center for Political Innovation, I would like to just give and express our deep admiration for the three defendants and what they put up with, what they struggled, how they endured. I also want to say that the Foreign Agents Registration Act, an absurd piece of legislation, was the basis of this prosecution. And that piece of legislation needs to be overturned. The Foreign Agents Registration Act is a threat to all Americans who advocate peace. It essentially criminalizes being friendly to other countries, and that piece of legislation needs to be overturned. That law is a threat on all Americans who advocate peace. We were honored as the Center for Political Innovation to raise this case at the United Nations, to raise this case at the World Youth Festival in Russia, and we will continue to raise this case. A full pardon needs to be granted to the Uhuru 3 because Donald Trump saw how that legislation could be weaponized against his own supporters as well. So Donald Trump needs to give a full pardon to the Uhuru 3 when he takes office. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I want you to know that every enemy of the United States is our friends and our comrades. We have great appreciation for the role that Russia and Putin have played in the revolution worldwide. And we condemn America's imperialism and Zionism all over the world. The United States is the #1 terrorist nation in the world. They the #1 criminals in the world. And they got prisons all over the world with all the good people in them. And I say burn down all the damn prisons. Burn them. And they raping Africa. They committing genocide and killing millions of people in the Congo as we talk. They committing genocide on the Palestinians on land that they know don't belong to them. And Israel is nothing but a military base for the United States. And Congo, they stealing our natural resources. They got thousands of industries down there digging holes, taking out diamonds and gold, and leaving the people starving. We are African people, and we must unite all over the world. We must build worldwide armies, and we must defeat the United States. We must defeat them punk-ass Democrats and Republicans of the whole America. Our fight is for Africa. Our fight is for liberation. And I want to warn the imperialists, warn the United States, that freedom fighters all over the world are up in arms, and they will lay their lives down before they lay their arms down. Death to America. Uhuru! Uhuru! Long live Africa!
Archer works. Check Uhuru.org for the itinerary, but it's located at 1910 North Ola Avenue.
All right, y'all. All right. That citizen verdict is in. And you heard it yourself. And wow, what an amazing press conference. They're reporting that sentencing from the moment they stepped out of those doors of that federal courthouse, of that Uhuru 3 sentencing hearing. Wow, that energy. 28 months got us down to now. The Uhuru 3 chairman, Amalia Shatella, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville. I tell you, if you're just joining us once again, my name is Mariah, and I'm your MC during today's special coverage of the Uhuru 3 sentencing hearing. And to repeat just what we learned there, I mean, in that press conference, the Uhuru 3 did not receive not 1 day in prison and not any fines. Not 1 day, not 1 dime. You heard it, not 1 day, not 1 dime. They were sentenced to 3 years of probation and community service. And y'all, community service, that's something that the movement already does every day. So we will learn more about all of that at a summation and rally at the Uhuru House. And that was originally scheduled for 3 p.m. So we'll let you know if that's happening any earlier. So we'll continue on with our pre-recorded programming, picking back up where we left off with episode 2 of the Uhuru 3 trial reenactment. Let's roll that video.
And popularize the philosophy of African internationalism developed by our very own Chairman Amalia for the past 6 decades. That is longer than I've been alive. And so we urge you to buy and read these books that the FBI doesn't want you to have, and to share this amazing collection with your friends and family as well. So if you haven't read them yet, you should go online now and purchase one or all of the books currently available on the burningspear.store. Our most recent publication is titled The Verdict is in Reparations Now. You can see that right here as well as on the screen. This book is an expanded edition of a report from the 1982 World Tribunal on Reparations to African People. In 1982, the APSP, the African People's Socialist Party, hosted the first World Tribunal on Reparations for African people in the US in Brooklyn, New York. We used international law to put the US government on trial for genocide against African people. An international panel of judges ruled that the US owed $4.1 trillion in reparations to African people. And this book, The Verdict is in Reparations Now, contains Chairman Omali's statements as people's advocate, as well as testimonies from African workers, academics, and experts who took the stand at the tribunal. And this included Professor Leonard Jeffries, Afeni Shakur, who was Black Panther leader and mother of Tupac Shakur, Professor Del Hunter, Attica prison resistor Akil Al-Jundi, political prisoner Mafundi Lake, healthcare advocate Abun Adeluna, and more. In the next segment of this reenactment of the Uhuru 3 anti-colonial free speech trial, you'll hear the government say that it was the Russian government who directed the Uhuru movement to testify at United Nations hearings that prompted the UN to call for reparations for Black people in the US. The struggle for reparations for African people in the US and around the world was not a Russian idea. It came straight out of the 400-year fight of African people to reclaim the value of the labor, lives, and resources that were stolen from us through colonialism. And next up in Omali Yeshitela Speaks, Burning Spear Media presents an assortment of the writings and speeches of Omali, including the entire text of his speech, Wolves, which was actually popularized in the groundbreaking Let's Get Free album by the hip hop group Dead Press. So you might also know from that. We also have One Africa, One Nation, which is a compilation of African internationalist articles by various authors, including Chairman Omali and African Socialist International Secretary General Louisi Kinshasa. So Burning Spear offers the entire political report by Chairman Omali from the last two Congresses of the African People's Socialist Party, in which he summarized the world situation, the work of the Uhuru movement, and the way forward. Burning Spear has also published Overturning the Culture of Violence, this behemoth of the book by African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman Penny Hess, another one of the Uhuru 3, tried for acting as an agent of Russia. So in vivid detail, the seminal work traces the establishment of colonial capitalism on the backs of African people and the active participation of everyday white people in colonial violence. It exposes the material basis of white opportunism, and it calls for a new relationship of solidarity and reparation. So if you're looking for something meaningful to give a friend, a family member, especially, or a loved one or an associate, I urge you to go to the burningspear.store and give the gift of knowledge and understanding. This is the burningspear.store. And when you make a purchase on the burningspear.store, you're supporting the right of the African working class to speak our own reality, come to our own conclusions, and plot a course for our own liberation. So in these books, you'll find the truth that the FBI wants to silence, and you can help this independent African-owned publishing house to thrive and grow. So thank you so much. And back to you, Mariah, and the Burning Spear Media Readers Theater Truth. Uhuru.
Thank you, Soliana. And come on, y'all, hit up that the burningspear.store and give that gift of knowledge from this African-owned publishing house. It's the holidays. This is a perfect gift. Now, the government's first witness was Professor Brian Taylor, director of the Moynihan Institute of Global Affairs at Syracuse University. Taylor's written 3 books about the workings of the Russian government following the 1991 disbanding of the Soviet Union. On the stand, Taylor testified that his research did not provide any information showing that the anti-globalization movement of Russia or its president, Alexander Ionov, were part of the Russian government. Uhuru 3 attorney Leonard Goodman pushed Taylor to admit that the U.S. intervention and NATO expansion led to Russian military action in Ukraine. As you'll see, the prosecution did not want the jury to hear this perspective. That's why they'll go so far to hide this information from the public, that they'll spend millions of dollars to silence the Uhuru 3 by putting them in prison. In this excerpt from the trial transcript, we start with Uhuru 3 attorney Leonard Goodman.
Is it true that there was a coup in 2014 where the democratically elected president of Ukraine named Yanukovych was removed forcibly?
No, I would not characterize it that way.
But he was removed from office, correct?
He did leave the country, yes, and therefore the position was vacant.
And is it true that United States officials, including the CIA, were involved in the efforts to remove Yanukovych from office?
Objection. Beyond scope.
Overruled. I have no information about the CIA having anything to do with the revolution that took place in Kiev in 2014.
Are you aware that Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland was caught on tape discussing replacing Yanukovych in January of 2014 before Yanukovych was removed?
Same objection.
Overruled. I would interpret the contents of the conversation differently.
Would you describe Yanukovych as a Russian-friendly president?
Yes, for the most part.
And he was replaced with someone who was more US and NATO friendly?
Yeah, his successor was more friendly towards the West.
And when President Poroshenko came in, that's when the conflict started, where there was fighting and fighting with the people in Donbass, who you've already described as Russian identifying. Is that true?
Well, the conflict actually started in February 2014 when Russia sent military personnel into the region of Crimea and illegally annexed that territory from Ukraine.
And that was in response to the removal of Yanukovych. Is that true?
That precipitated the event, yes.
You testified about how the relations deteriorated since the Cold War. Was the expansion of NATO into the former Soviet countries a factor in the deterioration of the relationship, in your opinion?
The fact that some East European countries, including 3 that had been members of the Soviet Union, invited to join NATO was part of the process, yes. Russia did not like that.
NATO expanded to some 13 or 14 countries close to Russia, is that correct?
Some of them are close to Russia.
But NATO did expand east towards the border of Russia. Isn't that true? And when it expanded into Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Albania, and Romania, US military bases were put in those countries. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. We're beyond the scope.
Just one more thing. Would you agree that the efforts of the United States to bring Ukraine into NATO has been a major cause of conflict?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, we know that the installation of U.S. military bases so close to Russia's border has been an essential threat to Russian sovereignty. And now we've seen that U.S. personnel carry out the direct hands-on launch of Actitum, missiles from Ukraine against targets inside Russia, prompting Russia to launch its new, apparently unstoppable Orishnik missile to destroy a munitions factory in Ukraine. Advocates for peace and international cooperation continue to call for an end to U.S. gun running and funding of foreign wars. So next, the prosecution called up FBI Special Agent Michael Klepek, a computer analyst who described the intelligence agency's surveillance and infiltration methods. And after him was Erie Droop, an FBI agent designed to FBI's Tampa field office. Irie's job on the stand was to read emails, Facebook messages, Skype transcripts, and other documents apparently compiled for her by other FBI employees at the direction of case agent Kelly Bowen. Prosecutor Marset introduced to evidence a document that Droop said was an attachment found in Penny Hess's Facebook records.
So, just starting at the very top, can you please tell the jury what we're looking at here?
We have the logo for the anti-globalization movement of Russia, the city of Moscow, May 18th, 2015. It's addressed to the consular section of the Embassy of the Russian Federation in Washington, D.C., and it's an invitation, excuse me.
Read the first sentence of this.
Hereby, the regional non-governmental organization Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia invites Mr. Omali Yeshitela to participate in the lectures, which will be held in Moscow, 27th to 30th of May.
And read the third paragraph.
Hereby we confirm that the lecturer's host will cover all expenses of Mr. Yeshitela, including local transportation, accommodation, and meals, as well as attendance of cultural events for the time period from the 26th of May, 2015 to the 31st of May, 2015.
Yeah, y'all heard that right. An NGO hosted and paid for a trip for Chairman Omali Yeshitela to go to another country to speak at a conference. It's legal and something that scholars, journalists, and activists, they do it all the time. The prosecution showed photos of Chairman Omali in Russia. Photos that were proudly and publicly posted on websites and social media sites of the Uhuru movement with complete transparency, showing the legitimate efforts of international solidarity and friendship that has always characterized the Uhuru movement. FBI witness Droop also read some messages that she said were in Penny Hess's Facebook account dealing with a petition that Hess helped to draft, charging the U.S. government with carrying out genocide against African people. The Russian NGO president, Ayanov, offered to promote the petition through the group's international media contacts, helping to publicize the colonial conditions continuing to be endured by African people in the U.S. These exchanges between Hess and Anastasia Pampraska, an assistant to Ayanov, reveal the stance of the Uhuru movement towards the relationship with the Russian activists to be one of cooperation, not servitude. Back to Prosecutor Marcet and FBI agent Droop.
Can you please read the message?
Penny, will you post today the petition on change.org and the site of the White House? Uhuru, Anastasia, I can't. Please let me explain our understanding of this. In terms of the actual petition to the United Nations, we take this really seriously and want to do it correctly. In the early 1950s, a group presented a petition to the UN objecting to the conditions of African people. This was published in a book called We Charge Genocide. This is a 250-page document that goes deeply into the legal issues, as well as over 100 pages of documentation and evidence. In terms of submitting a petition to the UN, we cannot submit any kind of document that is less thorough and complete than that one. This would require us to call a committee that includes legal expertise and will take some time. We do not want to submit a document to the UN that is incomplete or shoddy in any way. We can post on the petition websites.
The statute that the Uhuru Three were falsely accused of violating defines a foreign agent as one who operates under the direction and control of a foreign government. We just heard directly from court transcripts one of the many examples where a member of the Uhuru Three declined to carry out a suggestion made by the Russian NGO, even though they had a friendly and mutually supportive relationship. Next, the government called Tetiana Zolotarova another FBI agent. Zolotarova was born in Ukraine. Her first language is actually Russian. She also speaks Ukrainian and English. She took the stand to swear that the translations she performed on Russian language messages for this case were accurate. I don't know why we should believe her in any case. The government then called up Anna Myers, who works in the FBI's counterintelligence division, to read some of those communications said to be conducted between Ayanov and Popov. Born in Russia, Myers graduated from Florida State and used to be a police officer in Vero Beach, Florida. From the court transcripts, here are Prosecutor Risha Asakan with FBI agent Anna Myers.
Are you familiar with the term asset handler relationship?
Yes, a handler manages an asset, someone with intelligence access for a mutual benefit, gaining information or access while providing financial, legal, or immigration benefits.
Okay, Agent Myers, you have two large boxes next to you.
I do.
The government's exhibit
The government's Exhibit 252 appeared to be a Russian award certificate actually given to Alexander Ionov.
Please read the translation on page 2.
Following the coat of arms image, it says, "Dear Alexander Viktorovich, thank you for your active participation in promoting international friendship. Signature V. Putin, March 31st, 2014, Moscow."
The prosecution argued that this award was evidence of Ionov's role for Russian intelligence. But later in cross-examination, attorney Addie Griffin blew that away. Let's see how she did that. You ready, Addie?
You talked about an award that Putin supposedly gave Alexander Ionov.
Yes, or certificate. Mm-hmm.
And you said it looked official to you because it had a stamp to it?
It had a coat of arms and a signature.
And are you aware that the President of the United States hands out awards of scholastic excellence for students in America every year?
I'm not specifically, but I believe your statement.
And you're aware that they're signed by the President in that particular year?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
And you're aware that they're stamped with an official U.S. stamp?
I'm not aware.
Those awards of excellence don't make the students agents of our government, do they?
No.
Wow. Attorney Addie Griffin's cross-examination busted the prosecution's attempt to inflate a standard form letter as evidence that Ionov was a handler for Putin. Now we return to prosecuting attorney Asakan's direct examination of Agent Myers that introduced misleading and falsified so-called evidence of acting as Russian agents.
Agent Myers, can you please read Exhibit 275, which is a report that Alexander Ionov submitted to his supposed FSB handlers, Popov and Sukadolov.
After O'Malley Yeshitela's visit to Moscow in 2015, a bilateral cooperation program between ADR and Uhuru developed a reparations campaign, which was first introduced at the Black is Back Coalition Conference. Alexander and O'Malley decided the campaign would conduct a reparations tour in 8 U.S. states at the end of 2015. Alexander financed this campaign fully. The program was expanded in 2016 to include monthly reparations tours, which had visited all major cities in 2019. As of 2017, a reparations school opened in Tampa, Miami, and New York, where activists took short-term training courses, as well as politics school for future participation in elections at the local level. In 2018, O'Malley Yeshitela gave a lecture on reparations and protecting the legal interests and rights of African Americans in the USA at the Oxford Club. And at the end of 2015, after a conference in New York, the BLM movement added a demand for reparations to their agenda.
Again, they're saying that the Russians came up with the idea to campaign for reparations. They want the Russians to take credit for the chairman's winning debate at the Oxford University. Can you believe that? In his cross-examination of Anna Myers, attorney Akbar draws out the difference between acting as an agent under the direction and control of a foreign government versus engaging in equal power cooperation. He also exposes the outrageous and offensive idea that the Uhuru movement's reparations work had been created and developed under Russian control starting in 2015.
Can we go to 275? So in this communication, he actually says after O'Malley Yeshitela visits to Moscow in 2015, a bilateral cooperation program between AGR and Uhuru. Uhuru was developed including a reparations program for African American population in the U.S. in the first sentence.
Correct.
What does the bilateral cooperation program mean?
It means it goes 2 ways.
It goes both ways. It's a cooperation.
Yes.
Another part that I guess I have trouble with is he's saying he helped Chairman Yesatella create a reparations program. Is that what you're getting out of this in 2015?
Yes, that it was a joint effort.
Okay. And based on you being a part of this investigation, you know that the Uhuru Movement organization had been dealing with reparations for 50 years now, right?
I don't know the exact time frame.
But it's been a long time, longer than 2015.
Of course.
Of course, huh, Anna Myers? Well, the Uhuru movement has most definitely been engaged in reparations work longer than 2015. The African People's Socialist Party convened the first World Tribune for Reparations to African People in 1982 in Brooklyn, New York, which led to the formation of the African People's Reparations Organization. At this conference were notable figures in the reparations movement such as Afeni Shakur, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and others, which is documented in the book, The Verdict is In, Reparations Now. We Won't Stand for the Lies. The government prosecutors next called up FBI employee Tracy Cato, who participated in the raid at the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis. She described some of the photos she took of books, banners, and flyers. And then FBI agent Bill Tidwell from the Tampa office, another digital forensics examiner, took the stand and read off serial numbers from the computers and hard drives, off of which he said he pulled data and compiled reports as directed by his bosses to construct their framed up story. After Tidwell, Aaron Volk, an FBI agent from Wow, what powerful, powerful reenactment there. And if you're just joining us, my name is Mariah, and I've been your MC during today's special coverage of the Uhuru 3 sentencing hearing. And if you want to continue watching episode 2 and 3, and even check out episode 1 again, you can check that out at the Burning Spear Media YouTube's channel. It's there for the viewing. Now, and like I said, as far as the sentencing, what we got was not one day, not one time, and that's exactly what we wanted to hear. We want to thank you guys for joining us today. We are winning, guys. Uhuru. Uhuru. Again, guys, Uhuru, and thank you for joining us. It's been the live sentencing broadcast of the Uhuru 3 sentencing live from that Tampa courthouse. After 28 months, we got down to today, and just what we wanted. It was not one day, not one dime. And like we were watching the reenactments there on the broadcast in between. And if you want to continue to watch those, how we said, you can check that out at the Burning Spear Media YouTube's channel. And we wanted to let you know also that we will resume here live broadcast at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be with the tune back in for the rally. Want to thank you again for tuning in, and like we said, Uhuru, that means freedom.